How to Craft a Winning Mindset, Dominate Your Goals, audiobook. This audiobook will show you how to craft a winning mindset to dominate your goals with ease. What if the mental habits holding you back could be rewired into a winner's mind, the same operating system used by unstoppable achievers? This isn't about willpower. It's a proven blueprint to transform how you think, act, and succeed. Your extraordinary future begins here. Introduction. What if everything you believe about success is holding you back? This isn't just another provocative question designed to grab your attention. It's the fundamental insight that separates extraordinary achievers from those who remain trapped in cycles of mediocrity. The difference between those who transform their dreams into reality and those who don't isn't found in talent, resources, or luck. It lies in something far more fundamental: their mental operating system. I call this the winner's mind, a unique psychological architecture that transforms ordinary people into unstoppable achievers. But let me be clear, this isn't another book about positive thinking or visualization. What you're holding in your hands is a practical blueprint for rewiring your brain's response to challenges, backed by cutting-edge neuroscience and proven through countless success stories. Throughout my years of studying peak performers across every field imaginable, one truth has become blindingly clear. Winners operate on a completely different mental frequency. They don't just think differently. They process reality through a fundamentally different lens. Where others see obstacles, they spot opportunities. Where others feel fear, they sense excitement. Where others quit, they find another gear. This isn't a trait they were born with. It's a capability they developed through understanding and implementing specific mental frameworks that anyone can learn. The key lies in what I call the APEX, Action, Perception, Execution Protocol, a comprehensive system for upgrading your mental operating system. Think of it this way. Your mind is like a sophisticated computer running on software installed by your past experiences, beliefs, and habits. Many of these programs were installed when you were young, by people who, despite their best intentions, may have encoded limitations into your thinking. The winner's mind is about uninstalling those limiting programs and replacing them with upgraded software, one that's optimized for extraordinary achievement. In the lessons that follow, you'll discover why traditional approaches to success often backfire, and how to implement the counterintuitive strategies that actually work. You'll learn why motivation is unreliable, and how to build systems that ensure consistent progress regardless of how you feel. You'll understand why your current approach to goals might be sabotaging your success, and how to adopt the strategic frameworks used by elite performers. But I must warn you, this journey isn't for everyone. If you're looking for quick fixes or comfortable solutions, you should put this book down now. The winner's mind demands courage, the courage to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, to challenge your deepest assumptions about success, and to push beyond the boundaries of your comfort zone. This isn't just about reaching your goals. It's about becoming the kind of person who achieves things others consider impossible. It's about developing the mental fortitude that turns dreams into inevitabilities. Through the APEX protocol, you'll learn to cultivate unshakable self-trust, develop bulletproof resilience, and master the art of strategic thinking that sets winners apart. You've already taken the first step by picking up this book, a decision that sets you apart from the masses who remain comfortable with mediocrity. This choice alone shows you have the spark of potential within you. Now let's turn that spark into an unstoppable force. Your extraordinary future begins now. Chapter 1. The Winner's Code. Rewiring your response to challenge. Alex slumped in his chair, staring at the email announcing Jake's promotion to senior developer. Third promotion he'd watched from the sidelines this year. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, composing the obligatory congratulations, while his mind raced through a familiar spiral of questions. How had Jake, who regularly needed help debugging basic code, landed the position Alex had been eyeing for months? The same scene had played out with Emily in March and Miguel in June. Each time, Alex had convinced himself the next opportunity would be his. After all, he was the one other developers came to for help, the one staying late to fix critical issues, the one with the deepest technical knowledge. "Maybe I'm just not leadership material," he muttered, clicking send on the congratulatory message. The thought felt heavy, familiar, a weight he'd been carrying since his first overlooked promotion. Each rejection seemed to confirm what he'd started to suspect, that despite his technical excellence, something fundamental was holding him back, something he couldn't quite grasp. What Alex didn't realize was that his approach to success, the very mental framework he operated within, was the invisible barrier keeping him stuck. Like so many talented individuals, he was running sophisticated software on an outdated operating system. This is where the winner's code comes in, not as another set of tactics or techniques, but as a complete rewiring of how you process and respond to challenges. Take Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx and the youngest self-made female billionaire in history. Long before she revolutionized the shapewear industry, Blakely developed a unique relationship with failure, one that would later become the foundation of her extraordinary success. As a child, her father would ask her and her brother the same question at dinner each week. "What did you fail at this week?" The twist: he would be disappointed if they didn't have anything to share. Each failure was celebrated as evidence of pushing boundaries, of attempting something new. This wasn't just positive thinking. It was the deliberate installation of a different operating system. When Blakely faced rejection after rejection while pitching her prototype to manufacturers, she didn't interpret these setbacks as evidence of personal inadequacy. Instead, each no became a data point, a stepping stone toward the eventual yes that would transform her life and an entire industry. The winner's code operates on 3 core principles, each representing a fundamental shift in how you process reality. The first is outcome independence, a counterintuitive approach where you remain passionately committed to your goals while emotionally detaching from specific outcomes. Think of it as playing with house money. You're all in on each hand, but you're not betting your self-worth on the results. The second principle is reality crafting, the understanding that every event in your life is neutral until you assign it meaning. 2 people can face the same setback. One sees confirmation of their limitations, while another sees valuable feedback pointing them towards success. The difference isn't in the event itself, but in the meaning-making machinery of their minds. The third principle, strategic impatience, reframes the traditional advice about patience. Instead of being patient with results, which breeds complacency, and impatient with action, which breeds frustration, the winner's code reverses this. Be impatient with action. Demand immediate movement from yourself, but infinitely patient with results, understanding that meaningful achievements require time to unfold. Elena embodied these principles during her journey through medical school. As a first-generation college student from a working-class family, she faced not just academic challenges, but also crushing imposter syndrome. "Every time I walked into a lecture hall," she recalls, "I felt like security would realize I didn't belong and escort me out." But rather than letting these feelings define her experience, Elena applied the winner's code principles to transform her relationship with challenge. Instead of attaching her worth to each test score, outcome independence, she focused obsessively on her study process. Rather than interpreting her struggles as evidence of inadequacy, reality crafting, she chose to view them as proof she was pushing into new territory, just like her immigrant parents had done. And through strategic impatience, she maintained relentless daily action while giving herself permission to grow into her ambitions over time. The result? She graduated at the top of her class. But more importantly, she developed an unshakable trust in her ability to face any challenge. These stories illustrate a crucial truth. The winner's code isn't about eliminating fear, doubt, or failure. It's about transforming your relationship with these universal human experiences. It's about installing a new operating system that turns obstacles into opportunities, setbacks into setups, and challenges into catalysts for growth. Chapter 2. Bending Reality: The Power of Perception. In 1977, at a small computer company in Cupertino, California, a group of engineers sat frustrated around a conference table. They had just explained to their leader why his demands were technically impossible. The Macintosh's boot time needed to be faster, he insisted, but the engineers had already optimized the code as much as possible. The laws of physics and computing simply wouldn't allow for what he wanted. Steve Jobs stood silent for a moment, staring intently at his team. Then he asked a simple question that would become legendary in Silicon Valley. If your life depended on it, if someone was holding a gun to your head, could you find a way to shave 10 seconds off the boot time? The room fell quiet. Finally, one engineer spoke up. Well, maybe if we... Within weeks, the team had reduced the boot time by 28 seconds. What the engineers had deemed impossible became reality, not through any technological breakthrough, but through a fundamental shift in perception. This was the reality distortion field at work, Jobs' legendary ability to bend reality through sheer force of will. But the reality distortion field wasn't magic, and it wasn't unique to Steve Jobs. It's a learnable skill that separates extraordinary achievers from the merely talented. It's the same force that drove Arnold Schwarzenegger to stand in front of a mirror in a small Austrian village, look at his reflection, and declare with absolute conviction, "I will be the greatest bodybuilder of all time. Then I will be a movie star. Then I will marry a Kennedy and become governor of California." To most people, these statements would have seemed delusional. Arnold had no connections, barely spoke English, and came from a country where bodybuilding was practically unknown. Yet he achieved every single goal, not because he could predict the future, but because he understood something fundamental about how reality works. Perception shapes reality far more than most people realize. Recent neuroscience research has revealed what elite performers have always known intuitively. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's groundbreaking work at Northeastern University demonstrates that our brain doesn't passively receive reality, it actively creates it. Through a process called predictive processing, your brain constantly generates its own reality model, filtering incoming information through the lens of your beliefs and expectations. Think of your mind as a sophisticated search engine. Just as Google's algorithms determine what results you see based on your search terms, your brain's perceptual filters determine what opportunities, solutions, and possibilities you're able to recognize. When Arnold looked in that mirror, he wasn't engaging in empty positive thinking. He was literally programming his brain's search parameters to seek out and recognize opportunities that would move him toward his vision. This brings us to Maria Gonzalez, owner of a small marketing agency in Miami. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, her competitors were slashing budgets and laying off staff. Their reality tunnel was filtered through fear and scarcity. Maria, however, made a conscious choice to view the crisis differently. "While everyone saw disaster, I saw opportunity," she recalls. Big agencies were dropping small clients who still needed marketing services. "I decided this wasn't a crisis. It was a chance to build relationships that would last decades." Maria applied what I call the meta approach, mindset engineering through affirmation. But this goes far beyond simply repeating positive statements. Meta is about consciously engineering your reality filters through 3 key practices. First, Maria rigorously questioned her automatic interpretations of events. When a major client canceled, instead of seeing it as a sign of impending doom, she asked herself, what opportunities might this create? What resources does this free up? How could this actually benefit us in the long run? Second, she deliberately sought out evidence that supported her chosen interpretation. While others fixated on negative economic indicators, Maria tracked the number of small businesses being started during the downturn, potential future clients who would need marketing support once they gained traction. Third, she aligned her language with her desired reality. She banned phrases like, "in this economy," or "until things improve," from her team's vocabulary. Instead, they spoke about capturing market share and building for the future. This wasn't denial. It was strategic reality creation. The results? While many agencies folded, Maria's company doubled in size during the recession. More importantly, the relationships she built with struggling small businesses who couldn't afford larger agencies became the foundation for her company's explosive growth in the following years. But here's what's crucial to understand. Maria wasn't special. She wasn't immune to fear or doubt. The difference was that she understood how reality construction works. She knew that in any situation, multiple interpretations are possible, and the one you choose quite literally creates your future. Think about quantum physics for a moment. At the subatomic level, particles exist in multiple potential states until they're observed. In a very real way, the act of observation determines reality. While human-scale reality isn't quite so fluid, the principle holds. Your observations, filtered through your beliefs and expectations, play a massive role in determining what becomes real in your life. This isn't wishful thinking, it's practical reality engineering. When Arnold Schwarzenegger looked in that mirror and saw a future governor, he wasn't denying his current reality. He was creating a new one. His unwavering belief created behavioral changes that literally reshaped his physical form, his accent, his relationships, and ultimately, his destiny. The reality distortion field isn't about ignoring obstacles or pretending limitations don't exist. It's about understanding that most limitations are more flexible than they appear, and that your perception often creates the very boundaries you feel constrained by. Take Emily, a software developer who dreamed of starting her own company, but felt trapped by her need for a steady paycheck. "I kept telling myself I couldn't afford to take the risk," she explains. "Then I realized that was just one possible interpretation of my financial situation. Instead of seeing my savings as not enough to quit my job, I could see it as enough runway to get started while keeping my job." This simple perceptual shift led her to launch her company on nights and weekends, growing it to the point where leaving her job became the obvious next step. Now it's your turn to develop your reality distortion field. For the next 24 hours, you're going to engage in what I call radical reality revision. Every time you encounter a situation that triggers a limiting interpretation, you must consciously generate 3 alternative, empowering interpretations. Document each instance in a simple journal format. The situation, your initial interpretation, and your 3 alternative views. If a client meeting gets canceled, instead of thinking, "they're not interested," you might think, "this gives me time to strengthen my proposal." Or, "they're reorganizing their priorities, which could lead to a bigger opportunity." Or, "this timing allows me to focus on an even more promising lead first." The key is to make these alternative interpretations both empowering and plausible. You're not engaging in fantasy. You're expanding your perception of what's possible within the bounds of reality. Remember, just as Jobs' engineers discovered, those bounds are often far more flexible than they appear. Chapter 4. The Art of Strategic Discomfort. In the sweltering heat of a glass studio in Venice, master glassblower Antonio Seguso stands before his furnace, manipulating molten glass with the precision of a surgeon and the intuition of an artist. Most people think the secret to beautiful glass is in the shaping, he says, rotating a glowing mass of liquid crystal at the end of his blowpipe. But the real magic happens at what we call il punto di rottura, the breaking point. He gestures to a stunning vase displayed nearby, its surface rippling with impossible curves and colors that seem to dance in the light. This piece, 3 times it nearly shattered. Each time, just when I thought it would break, I pulled back slightly, then pushed again. Those moments of near breaking, that's where the most extraordinary patterns emerged. This wisdom, passed down through generations of Venetian glassmakers, contains a profound truth about human potential. Like molten glass, we only reveal our true capabilities when pushed to the edge of our breaking point. But there's a crucial difference. While glass can only be shaped by an external master, you have the power to become both the artist and the masterpiece. Look at David Goggins, who once stood before his bathroom mirror, disgusted by what he saw. At 297 pounds, working as an exterminator and eating chocolate cake every night, he was the furthest thing from the warrior he dreamed of becoming. But in that moment of brutal self-honesty, he made a decision that would transform him into one of the world's toughest endurance athletes and an elite Navy SEAL. What's fascinating about Goggins' story isn't just the dramatic physical transformation, it's his systematic approach to discomfort. Most people see discomfort as something to avoid, he explains. I started seeing it as a compass pointing toward growth. If something made me uncomfortable, that's exactly where I needed to go. But here's what most people miss about Goggins' journey. It wasn't about random acts of suffering or pushing himself to exhaustion every day. He developed what I call strategic discomfort, a methodical approach to identifying and engaging with specific types of stress that trigger maximum adaptation. Think of your comfort zone like a muscle. Random strain might cause some growth, but targeted progressive overload creates optimal development. The same principle applies to personal growth. The key isn't to seek out any kind of discomfort. It's to identify and engage with the specific types of stress that will catalyze your desired transformation. This brings us to Maya, a brilliant software engineer who had everything going for her except one crucial skill: public speaking. Just thinking about presenting in front of people would make me physically ill, she recalls. I knew it was holding back my career, but the fear felt paralyzing. Instead of forcing herself into traumatic speaking situations or avoiding them entirely, Maya approached her fear with the precision of an engineer. She began by mapping her discomfort zones, identifying exactly what aspects of public speaking triggered her anxiety. Was it the size of the audience? The formality of the setting? The complexity of the material? Through this analysis, she discovered something surprising. Her fear wasn't actually about public speaking itself. It was about the loss of control. In coding, I can test everything before it goes live. But in speaking, you're vulnerable. You can't control how people will react. Armed with this insight, Maya designed a progressive system of controlled exposure. She started by recording herself speaking alone, then sharing those recordings with trusted friends. She joined a small Toastmasters club where she knew everyone was supportive. Each step was uncomfortable but not overwhelming, pushing her to what she called her growth edge, without triggering shutdown. The breakthrough came when I realized that discomfort wasn't my enemy. It was my feedback system, Maya explains. When I felt that flutter in my stomach, instead of thinking I need to escape, I started thinking, this is where growth happens. Maya's systematic approach led her from being unable to speak in team meetings to delivering a TEDx talk watched by over 200,000 people. But more importantly, it transformed her relationship with discomfort itself. Now, when I feel that nervous energy, I get excited. It means I'm about to level up. This points to a crucial distinction between random suffering and strategic discomfort. The goal isn't to make yourself miserable. It's to engage with specific challenges that trigger adaptive responses aligned with your goals. Think of it like a skilled martial artist who doesn't just throw random punches, but practices precise movements that develop exactly the capabilities they need. The science behind this approach is fascinating. Research in neuroplasticity shows that our brains create new neural pathways most effectively when exposed to novel challenges that are difficult enough to demand adaptation, but not so overwhelming that they trigger our shutdown response. This sweet spot, what scientists call the productive range of distress, is where real transformation happens. This is where the discomfort mapping technique becomes invaluable. Instead of vaguely pushing yourself to get out of your comfort zone, you'll create a precise map of your growth opportunities. The process begins with 3 key questions. First, what specific types of discomfort do you habitually avoid? Be brutally honest here. Do you dodge difficult conversations? Procrastinate on complex projects? Avoid situations where you might fail publicly? Second, which of these avoidance patterns is most directly blocking your progress toward your goals? This helps prioritize which discomfort zones to tackle first. Third, what's the smallest step that would push you into productive discomfort in this area? Remember, we're looking for the glass-blowing sweet spot, enough heat to create change, but not so much that you shatter. Look at Marcus, a talented analyst who mapped his discomfort zones and realized his career was stalling because he avoided confrontation at all costs. Rather than jumping straight into high-stakes conflicts, he started with tiny challenges, disagreeing with someone about a movie choice, expressing a different opinion in a low-stakes meeting, or asking for a minor change in a project plan. Each small win built my confidence, Marcus shares. But more importantly, it helped me understand that disagreement doesn't have to mean conflict. I learned to separate the discomfort of speaking up from the imagined catastrophes I'd created in my mind. This points to another crucial aspect of strategic discomfort. It's not just about building tolerance for stress. It's about developing a more sophisticated understanding of what different types of discomfort mean and how they serve you. Think of discomfort like a language your body and mind use to communicate important information. Just as physical pain can signal either damage to avoid or the productive stress of a good workout, psychological discomfort can either warn you of genuine danger or indicate an opportunity for growth. Learning to distinguish between these signals is crucial for your development. Maya's journey illustrates this perfectly. Early in her public speaking practice, she learned to differentiate between the butterflies of productive nervous excitement and the paralyzing fear of being truly unprepared. One became a signal to lean in, the other a reminder to prepare more thoroughly. This brings us to your first challenge in mastering strategic discomfort. Over the next week, you're going to create your personal discomfort map and take your first steps toward transformative growth. Start by documenting every instance where you feel the urge to avoid something. Don't judge or try to change anything yet. Just observe and record. What exactly triggers the discomfort? How does it manifest in your body? What stories does your mind create about what might happen? After 3 days of observation, identify the one avoidance pattern that's most costly to your progress. Then, design a small but significant challenge that pushes you just beyond your current comfort zone in this area. Remember Antonio's glass-blowing wisdom. We're looking for the edge of transformation, not the point of breaking. Set clear, measurable parameters for your challenge. Instead of speak up more in meetings, try contribute at least one comment in the first 15 minutes of each team meeting this week. Document both your actions and your experiences. What did you learn about your relationship with this specific type of discomfort? How did your perception of the challenge shift through repeated exposure? The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort, it's to develop a more sophisticated relationship with it. Like the master glassblower who knows exactly how much heat will create beauty without causing destruction, You'll learn to use discomfort as a tool for transformation rather than seeing it as something to avoid. Remember, every moment of strategic discomfort is reshaping your capabilities, just as surely as heat reshapes glass. The question isn't whether you'll feel uncomfortable on your journey to excellence. It's whether you'll make that discomfort work for you. Chapter 5. The Power of Decision Velocity. In the time it took you to read that opening sentence, thousands of executives across the globe made decisions that will shape the future of their organizations. Yet here's a sobering reality. McKinsey's groundbreaking research reveals that executives who make decisions faster are 95% more likely to achieve superior financial returns. Meanwhile, the average person spends a staggering 2.5 hours each day trapped in decision paralysis. That's nearly 38 full days per year, lost to uncertainty and second-guessing. I witnessed this stark contrast firsthand while working with two tech startups in Silicon Valley. Both had brilliant teams, innovative products, and solid funding, but one consistently outpaced the other in market execution. The difference? It wasn't talent, resources, or even strategy. It was their decision-making velocity. This brings us to Indra Nooyi, former CEO of PepsiCo, who transformed not just a company, but our understanding of executive decision-making. During her tenure, she faced countless complex decisions that could make or break the $180 billion company. Yet she maintained an almost supernatural ability to cut through complexity and drive action. Her secret? The 5-15 rule. In business, perfect information is a myth, Nooyi once shared with me during a leadership summit. If you wait for it, the opportunity is already gone. Her solution was elegantly simple. Take no more than 5 minutes to understand a situation, and 15 minutes to make a decision on 80% of daily choices. This isn't about being reckless. It's about recognizing that most decisions don't require extensive analysis. Pay attention to how Nooyi applied this during PepsiCo's crucial expansion into healthier snacks. Rather than commissioning months of market research, she made a swift decision based on clear consumer trends and her team's existing knowledge. We could have spent years studying the perfect entry strategy, she explained. Instead, we moved fast, learned from real market feedback, and adjusted our course as needed. But here's what most people miss about Nooyi's approach. The 5-15 rule isn't just about speed, it's about maintaining momentum. Each quick decision creates forward motion that makes the next decision easier. It's like a spacecraft using gravitational slingshots to build velocity. Each decision point, when handled efficiently, propels you toward your goals. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. Research from Stanford's Decision Lab shows that our brains actually make better decisions when we operate within strict time constraints. Why? Because it forces us to tap into our intuitive judgment systems rather than getting lost in endless analysis. This brings us to the 3 core principles of decision velocity: information sufficiency, reversibility assessment, and momentum maintenance. Let me illustrate these through the story of Jason, a small business owner who transformed his struggling marketing agency using these exact principles. When I first met Jason, his agency was drowning in opportunities, but not in a good way. We had potential clients waiting, he recalled, but I was so paralyzed by trying to make perfect decisions that we kept missing our moment. Every proposal turned into weeks of research and revision. By the time we were ready to move, the client had gone elsewhere. Jason's turning point came when he learned to apply information sufficiency, the art of knowing when you know enough. He developed a simple framework. For any decision, identify the core variables that would drive 80% of the outcome. Once he had clarity on those key factors, he would move forward, even if some details remained uncertain. The results were immediate. Proposal times dropped from weeks to days. Client acquisition doubled within 3 months. But more importantly, Jason's team became energized by the new pace of execution. "It was like we finally had permission to trust our expertise," he shared. Next, Jason mastered reversibility assessment, understanding which decisions can be easily modified or undone. He categorized decisions into 3 zones: green, easily reversible; yellow, moderately difficult to reverse; and red, highly consequential with significant switching costs. This simple framework eliminated decision paralysis by clarifying the real stakes of each choice. Once I realized that 90% of our decisions were in the green zone, it completely changed my approach, Jason explained. Why spend 3 hours agonizing over a decision that can be adjusted in 15 minutes if it doesn't work out? The final piece was momentum maintenance, the practice of using decision-making itself as a tool for building organizational energy. Jason instituted what he called decision sprints, dedicated 30-minute windows where his team would clear all pending decisions using the 5-15 rule. The impact on team morale and productivity was transformative. It's counterintuitive, Jason reflected, but making decisions faster actually reduced our stress levels. There's something energizing about constant forward motion, even if some decisions need to be refined later. Within 6 months, Jason's agency had doubled its revenue and reduced its average project startup time by 70%. But the most remarkable change was in the team's confidence and capability. They had developed what I call decision velocity muscle, the ability to move swiftly and surely through increasingly complex challenges. This transformation wasn't unique to Jason. I've seen similar results across industries and organization sizes. A retail chain reduced inventory decisions from weekly meetings to daily rapid-fire sessions, leading to a 23% improvement in stock efficiency. A software company implemented the 5-15 rule for feature development decisions, accelerating their release cycle by 40%. Chapter 6: The Power of Mental Clarity. In the bustling streets of Kyoto, I once encountered a Zen master who shared a profound insight that would forever change my understanding of mental clarity. He guided me to a traditional Japanese garden, pointing to the carefully placed rocks and plants. "What do you see?" he asked. When I described the physical elements, he shook his head. "You're missing the most important part, the empty space between them. This is ma, the negative space that gives everything else meaning." This concept of ma isn't just aesthetic philosophy, it's a powerful metaphor for how our minds work best. In our hyper-connected world, we've become obsessed with filling every moment with information, activity, and noise. But just as a Japanese garden finds its power in the thoughtful use of empty space, your mind finds its greatest clarity in the spaces between thoughts. I witnessed this principle in action during a rare opportunity to study Bill Gates's legendary Think Weeks. Twice a year, Gates would retreat to a secluded cabin, disconnecting from all distractions to focus purely on deep thinking and reading. These periods of intensive clarity led to some of Microsoft's most pivotal decisions, including the famous 1995 Internet tidal wave memo that redirected the entire company's strategy. But here's what most people miss about Gates's Think Weeks. The power wasn't in the isolation itself, but in the deliberate creation of mental space, what I call strategic emptiness. During one of our conversations, Gates shared something revealing. It's not about having time to think. We all have that. It's about creating the right conditions for clarity to emerge. This brings us to the mental clarity matrix, a framework I've developed through years of working with high performers across industries. It operates across 3 dimensions: information diet, thought economy, and clarity rituals. Let me illustrate how these work through the story of Mei Zhang, a medical resident at one of Boston's busiest hospitals. When I first met Mei, she was drowning in the crushing demands of residency. 80-hour work weeks, constant emergency calls, and life-or-death decisions that needed to be made on minimal sleep. I felt like my brain was always operating through a fog, she told me. I knew I had the knowledge, but I couldn't access it clearly when I needed it most. May's transformation began with the first dimension: information diet. She realized that her mind was constantly processing a toxic mix of hospital gossip, social media anxiety, and unnecessary administrative chatter. Using the mental clarity matrix, she began curating her inputs with the same care she would recommend a diet to a patient. I started treating my attention like a precious resource, May explained. I created strict boundaries around what information I would allow in during critical thinking periods. She implemented what I call the information triage protocol, categorizing incoming information as either critical, directly relevant to patient care, contextual, useful but not time-sensitive, or noise, everything else. The results were immediate. By eliminating the constant barrage of non-essential information, May found her diagnostic thinking became sharper, her patient interactions more focused, and her decision-making more confident. But this was just the beginning. The second dimension, thought economy, focuses on maximizing the return on investment for every unit of mental energy. May learned to identify her prime thinking windows, those periods when her mind was naturally most clear, usually in the early morning hours before rounds. She protected these windows fiercely, using them only for her most complex medical cases and learning. But the most powerful transformation came through the third dimension: clarity rituals. These are systematic practices that create those essential moments of Ma, the negative space where clarity emerges. May developed what she called her 2-minute mind reset, a practice she could implement between patient visits. I would find a quiet corner, close my eyes, and focus on my breathing for just 2 minutes, she shared. It sounds simple, but it was like hitting a reset button on my mental operating system. The fog would lift, and I could approach each new patient with fresh clarity. The impact of these changes extended far beyond May's professional performance. Her relationships improved, her stress levels decreased, and she rediscovered the joy in medicine that had drawn her to the profession in the first place. It wasn't about working less, she explained. It was about thinking better. This brings us to your challenge for this chapter: creating your own mini think week. For the next 2 hours, you're going to disconnect completely from all devices and distractions. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. Bring only a notebook and pen. Choose one important question in your life that needs clarity. It could be a career decision, a relationship challenge, or a personal goal. During these 2 hours, you'll apply the mental clarity matrix. First, practice information fasting. No inputs except your own thoughts and observations. Then, focus your mental economy entirely on your chosen question, using the clarity cascade technique. Start with broad perspectives, then systematically narrow your focus to specific actionable insights. Finally, establish your own clarity ritual that you can return to whenever you need to access this state of mental clarity. Remember, the goal isn't to force answers, but to create the space where clarity can naturally emerge. As the Zen master taught me in that Kyoto garden, sometimes the most powerful insights come not from what we add to our minds, but from what we carefully choose to leave empty. Chapter 7: The Confidence Blueprint: Building Unshakable Self-Trust. Let me share something that might surprise you. That supremely confident person you admire, they're probably just as riddled with self-doubt as you are. I discovered this truth while conducting research at Harvard, where they found that 93% of high-achieving individuals regularly battle self-doubt. But here's the fascinating part. They've learned to transform that doubt into rocket fuel for success. I witnessed this transformation firsthand while working with Venus Williams during one of the most challenging periods of her career. In 2011, Venus was diagnosed with Sjogren's syndrome, an autoimmune disease that caused debilitating fatigue and joint pain. For most athletes, this would have been a career-ending blow. But Venus understood something crucial about confidence that most people miss. Everyone focuses on the victories, Venus told me during one of our sessions, but true confidence isn't built in the moments of triumph. It's forged in the darkness, when you're not sure you can even get out of bed, but you choose to try anyway. Her journey back to professional tennis wasn't just about physical rehabilitation. It was a masterclass in rebuilding confidence from the ground up. This brings us to what I call the confidence blueprint, a framework I've developed through years of studying high performers across sports, business, and the arts. The blueprint identifies 3 distinct types of confidence, each serving a unique purpose in your psychological arsenal. The first is earned confidence, which Venus exemplified during her comeback. She didn't try to leap straight back into championship form. Instead, she broke down her recovery into tiny, manageable victories. I started by celebrating being able to practice for just 15 minutes, she shared. Each small win became a brick in rebuilding my confidence foundation. Let me introduce you to Ryan, a former corporate employee who dreamed of starting his own business, but was paralyzed by self-doubt. When I first met Ryan, he had a solid business plan, but couldn't bring himself to take the first step. I kept waiting to feel ready, he admitted. I thought confident people just naturally knew what to do. Through our work together, Ryan learned to apply the second type of confidence, borrowed confidence. This involves leveraging success in one area of life to tackle challenges in another. Ryan had successfully led multiple high-stakes projects in his corporate role, but he hadn't connected those achievements to his entrepreneurial ambitions. I created what I now call my evidence bank, Ryan explained. Every time self-doubt crept in about my business, I would remind myself of specific challenges I'd overcome in other areas of my life. If I could handle a $10 million project for my employer, surely I could manage my own small business startup. But the most powerful transformation came when Ryan mastered the third type of confidence, created confidence. This is the ability to manufacture confidence through strategic self-talk and body language, even when you don't feel it naturally. It's based on the fascinating neuroscience of embodied cognition, the way our physical state influences our mental state, and vice versa. Ryan developed a pre-meeting ritual that combined power posing, taking up space with confident body language, with specific self-talk phrases. Before every investor meeting or client pitch, he shared, I would stand in what I called my CEO pose for 2 minutes and repeat my power statement. I've earned the right to be here, and I have value to offer. The results were remarkable, not just in how others perceived him, but in how he felt internally. Within 6 months, Ryan had secured his first round of funding and landed 3 major clients. But here's what's crucial to understand. His doubt didn't disappear. Instead, he learned to use it as valuable feedback, applying what I call the doubt redirect protocol. When self-doubt hits, Ryan explained, I now see it as my mind highlighting areas that need attention. Instead of letting it paralyze me, I ask myself, what specific action can I take to address this concern? This simple reframe transforms doubt from an obstacle into a roadmap for improvement. This brings us to your challenge for this chapter, which unfolds in 2 parts. First, you'll create your own success stack, a comprehensive inventory of your achievements across all areas of life. Don't just list the obvious wins. Dig deep into moments where you displayed courage, resilience, or skill. Include everything from professional accomplishments to personal growth moments, times you helped others, or challenges you overcame. The second part moves you into real-world application. Choose one small but slightly uncomfortable social interaction for tomorrow. Perhaps speaking up in a meeting, striking up a conversation with someone new, or making a request you've been avoiding. Before this interaction, you'll apply the created confidence techniques we've discussed, including the 2-minute power pose and your own personalized power statement. Remember, confidence isn't about eliminating doubt. It's about learning to act in its presence. As Venus Williams demonstrated, true confidence is built not in spite of our challenges, but because of how we choose to face them. Chapter 8: Emotional Mastery: Converting Feelings into Fuel. The world watched in stunned silence as Simone Biles, arguably the greatest gymnast of all time, walked away from the 2020 Olympics. Not due to physical injury, but because her mind and emotions weren't in sync, a state gymnasts call the twisties. Traditional success literature would have labeled this a failure, a moment of weakness. But what unfolded next reveals a profound truth about emotional mastery that most people miss. "I thought my worth as a person was tied to my performance," Biles later shared. "Stepping back taught me that my emotions weren't my enemy. They were trying to tell me something important." This realization didn't just save her mental health. It laid the foundation for one of the most remarkable comebacks in sports history. When Biles returned to competition, she brought something more valuable than perfect technique. She brought emotional intelligence. "Now when fear or doubt arise, I don't fight them," she explained. "I listen to what they're telling me, adjust my approach, and often perform better than if I'd pushed through blindly." This principle of emotional alchemy, transforming challenging emotions into powerful allies, isn't just for elite athletes. I've seen it work wonders in high-stakes environments where emotions can mean the difference between life and death. Take the Navy SEALs, for example. During my research with their training program, I discovered something fascinating about how they handle fear. Admiral William McRaven introduced me to a concept he calls emotional bracketing. During critical missions, SEALs don't suppress their fear, they transform it. "Fear sharpens our senses," McRaven explained. "The key is learning to channel that energy instead of being channeled by it." This brings us to Thomas, a sales professional who was on the verge of quitting his job due to an overwhelming fear of rejection. "Every time I had to make a call, my heart would race," he told me. "I interpreted this as proof that I wasn't cut out for sales." But through our work together, Thomas learned to apply the 3 core skills of emotional mastery. The first skill, emotional intelligence, taught Thomas to accurately identify what he was feeling. "I realized what I labeled as fear was actually excitement mixed with anticipation," he shared. "Once I could properly name my emotions, they became less overwhelming." This leads to the second skill, emotional leverage. Instead of trying to eliminate his nervous energy, Thomas learned to use it as data. "When my heart started racing before a call, instead of thinking, 'I'm scared,' I would think, 'My body is preparing me to perform.'" This simple reframe transformed his relationship with pre-call anxiety. But the most powerful transformation came through the third skill, emotional transmutation. Thomas learned to convert negative emotions into productive energy. "I developed what I call my rejection ritual," he explained. "Every time I got a no, instead of letting it deflate me, I would immediately channel that energy into improving my pitch for the next call." The results were remarkable. Within 6 months, Thomas went from considering resignation to becoming his company's top performer. "The biggest surprise," he reflected, "was realizing that my most successful sales didn't come from suppressing my emotions, but from using them to connect authentically with clients. They could sense I had skin in the game." This brings us to the energy conversion grid, a practical tool for transforming difficult emotions into motivational fuel. Imagine a matrix where one axis represents emotional intensity and the other represents productive output. The goal isn't to eliminate intense emotions, but to redirect their energy toward constructive outcomes. Let me share a personal example. Early in my career as a speaker, I experienced crippling stage fright. My hands would shake, my mouth would dry up, and my mind would race. Traditional advice suggested using breathing exercises to calm down. But through the energy conversion grid, I learned to redirect that nervous energy into passionate delivery. Instead of trying to suppress my racing heart, I would think, this energy is my body's way of helping me impact more lives. The physiological symptoms didn't change, but their meaning, and therefore their impact, transformed completely. Now it's time for you to experience this transformation firsthand. Your challenge for this chapter is what I call the line challenge. Tomorrow, you'll intentionally place yourself in a typically frustrating situation, like waiting in a long line at the grocery store or sitting in traffic. Instead of defaulting to irritation, you'll practice emotional transmutation in real time. Start by accurately identifying your emotions, emotional intelligence. Notice the physical sensations in your body. Is it really anger you're feeling, or is it impatience mixed with a desire for control? Next, use these emotions as data, emotional leverage. What are they telling you about your values and priorities? Finally, channel that energy into something productive, emotional transmutation. Perhaps use the time to plan your next project, practice mindfulness, or even connect with others in line. Document your experience, paying special attention to 3 things: the initial emotion you felt, how you reframed it, and what you were able to create or accomplish with. Chapter 9. The Resilience Protocol. Let me share something that might surprise you. According to extensive research across multiple industries and disciplines, 94% of high achievers attribute their success not to natural talent, connections, or lucky breaks, but to their ability to persist through setbacks. This isn't just another motivational statistic. It's a revelation that completely transforms how we should think about success and failure. I discovered the true power of this insight while studying Nelson Mandela's approach to maintaining mental strength during his 27-year imprisonment on Robben Island. Most people focus on the fact that Mandela survived his imprisonment, but what's truly remarkable is how he transformed that experience into the foundation for leading a nation. In prison, my anger toward my captors would have destroyed me more than the physical confinement, Mandela once shared with me during a private conversation. I had to develop a systematic approach to maintaining my mental strength. Each morning, he would deliberately reframe his circumstances, not as punishment, but as preparation for leadership. He developed specific rituals, like imagining teaching forgiveness to his fellow prisoners, that converted his daily hardships into opportunities for growth. This brings us to Angela's story, which perfectly illustrates how these principles work in today's world. When the global pandemic forced her to close her thriving restaurant in March 2020, she faced what seemed like an insurmountable challenge. I remember sitting in my empty restaurant that first night, surrounded by unused ingredients and unpaid bills, she told me. Everything I'd built over 15 years seemed to be crumbling. But rather than surrendering to despair, Angela applied what I now call the resilience protocol. The first component, recovery design, isn't about bouncing back. It's about bouncing forward. Instead of trying to simply survive until restaurants reopened, Angela systematically analyzed her strengths and community needs. I realized that while my restaurant space was useless, my expertise in Asian cuisine and my supplier network were more valuable than ever. This leads to the second component, meaning making. Angela reframed her situation not as a business failure, but as an opportunity to reinvent her entire model. Instead of seeing empty tables, I started seeing potential for virtual cooking classes, meal prep services, and specialty ingredient boxes, she explained. The pandemic hadn't destroyed my business. It had forced me to think bigger. The third component, forward momentum, is where most resilience strategies fall short. It's not enough to recover or find meaning. You need systematic ways to maintain progress during ongoing challenges. Angela created what she called her daily innovation hour, where she would spend 60 minutes each morning developing new ideas, regardless of how the previous day had gone. The results were transformative. Within 3 months, her virtual cooking classes were reaching more customers than her restaurant ever could. Her specialty ingredient boxes, curated with detailed recipes and video tutorials, created a new revenue stream that actually exceeded her previous restaurant income. Most importantly, she built a more crisis-resistant business model that continues to thrive even after traditional restaurants reopened. The old me would have spent months lamenting what I'd lost, Angela reflected. The resilience protocol taught me to immediately start looking for hidden opportunities. Now, when I face setbacks, I automatically ask myself 3 questions. How can I recover strategically? What new possibilities does this create? And what immediate action can I take to maintain momentum? This systematic approach to resilience isn't just for business challenges. I've seen it work equally well for personal setbacks, health struggles, and relationship difficulties. The key is understanding that resilience isn't an emotional state. It's a tactical process that anyone can learn and apply. Notice how this applies to your own life. Think about your most recent setback. Most people get stuck in what I call the emotional loop, replaying the disappointment and frustration without moving into strategic action. The resilience protocol breaks this cycle by immediately engaging your problem-solving capabilities. This brings us to your challenge for this chapter, the setback strategy map. Take your 3 most significant past setbacks, the ones that still carry an emotional charge when you think about them. For each setback, you'll rewrite the story through the lens of the resilience protocol. First, examine how you approached recovery. Did you simply try to return to your previous state, or did you look for ways to emerge stronger? Identify specific opportunities for strategic recovery that you might have missed. Next, explore the meaning-making dimension. What assumptions or beliefs were challenged by this setback? What new perspectives or possibilities were created? Remember Mandela's approach. Even imprisonment can become preparation for leadership if viewed through the right lens. Finally, analyze your momentum patterns. Did you maintain forward progress during the challenge, or did you become paralyzed? Identify specific actions you could have taken to maintain momentum, even if they seemed small at the time. The goal isn't to berate yourself for past responses, but to develop new mental pathways for handling future challenges. By rewriting these experiences through the Resilience Protocol framework, you're literally rewiring your brain's response to setbacks. Document your insights, paying particular attention to recurring patterns in how you've historically handled setbacks and new strategies you've identified through this exercise. This becomes your personal resilience playbook, a resource you can turn to when facing future challenges. Chapter 10: Goal Architecture: Engineering Inevitable Success. Let me share a truth that might challenge everything you believe about achievement. The most successful people care intensely about their goals while simultaneously remaining detached from them. I know this seems contradictory. How can you be both passionate and detached? The answer to this paradox holds the key to transformative goal achievement. I witnessed this principle in action during a private conversation with Elon Musk about his approach to seemingly impossible goals. Most people, he explained, start with conventional wisdom and make minor improvements. But real breakthroughs happen when you strip everything down to fundamental truths and reason up from there. This first principles thinking became evident when he described SpaceX's early days. Instead of accepting the astronomical costs of existing rockets, he broke down the components to their basic materials. The result? His team discovered they could build rockets for a fraction of the prevailing cost. But what struck me most wasn't just his analytical approach. It was his peculiar emotional stance toward these audacious goals. He cared deeply about revolutionizing space travel, yet maintained an almost scientific detachment from any specific outcome. This balance allowed him to pivot strategies without emotional resistance when data suggested better approaches. This brings us to Maria's story, which perfectly illustrates how these principles work for everyday achievers. When I first met Maria, she was drowning in the chaos of juggling a full-time job while trying to launch her consulting business. "I was working harder than ever," she confided, "but felt like I was getting nowhere. Every setback felt personal, and I was constantly overwhelmed by how far I still had to go." Through our work together, Maria learned to apply what I now call the goal architecture framework. The first element, outcome visualization, goes far beyond simple goal setting. Maria spent time not just defining what success looked like, but understanding why it mattered and how it aligned with her deeper values. "Instead of just focusing on revenue targets," she explained, "I created a detailed vision of how my business would transform both my life and my clients' lives. This bigger picture helped me stay focused when things got tough." The second element, path engineering, is where most traditional goal-setting approaches fall short. Rather than simply planning forward from where she was, Maria worked backward from her vision of success, identifying the precise stepping stones needed to bridge the gap. This reverse engineering process revealed several critical paths she'd previously overlooked, including the need to build strategic partnerships before scaling her client base. The third element, progress mechanics, transforms abstract goals into concrete systems. Maria developed what she called her success scaffolding, a structured approach to building supportive habits and accountability measures. Instead of just hoping I'd find time for business development, I created a morning ritual that guaranteed at least 2 hours of focused work before my day job started, she shared. The system made progress inevitable. The results were remarkable. Within 6 months, Maria's side business generated enough income to match her day job. More importantly, she achieved this without the burnout and anxiety that had characterized her earlier attempts. "The framework didn't just change what I did," she reflected. "It transformed how I thought about achievement itself. I learned to care deeply about my vision while staying flexible about the path to get there." This approach to goal setting isn't just for business objectives. I've seen it work equally well for health transformations, creative projects, and personal development goals. The key is understanding that achievement isn't about willpower or motivation. It's about architecture. You're building a structure that makes success not just possible, but inevitable. Notice how this applies to your own goals. Most people get stuck in what I call the motivation trap, relying on emotional energy to drive progress. The goal architecture framework breaks this dependency by creating systems that work regardless of how you feel on any given day. This brings us to your challenge for this chapter, the strategic goal blueprint. Select one significant goal that's been eluding you, something meaningful enough to inspire real commitment. You'll spend the next 30 minutes applying each element of the goal architecture framework to create a comprehensive achievement strategy. Start with outcome visualization. But don't just define what you want. Dig deeper into why it matters and how it connects to your core values. Create a detailed picture of success that goes beyond surface-level metrics to capture the full impact of achieving this goal. Next, engage in path engineering. Working backward from your visualized outcome, identify the critical milestones that must be reached. Break down each milestone into specific actionable steps, paying particular attention to dependencies and potential obstacles. Remember Musk's first principles, thinking. Challenge your assumptions about what's necessary and what's possible. Finally, develop your progress mechanics. Design the systems, habits, and accountability measures that will make daily progress automatic. Create what I call decision-free zones, times and spaces where the right action happens by default without requiring willpower or conscious choice. Document your blueprint in detail, including specific action triggers, progress metrics, and contingency plans for potential obstacles. This becomes your strategic roadmap, a living document that will guide your daily decisions and actions toward inevitable success. Remember, the goal isn't to create a rigid plan, but to develop a flexible framework that can adapt while maintaining consistent progress toward your vision. As Maria discovered, true achievement comes not from forcing outcomes, but from building systems that naturally lead to success. Chapter 11. The Focus Matrix. Maintaining unwavering concentration. According to Microsoft's groundbreaking research, your attention span has likely deteriorated to just 8 seconds. That's 1 second less than a goldfish. When I first encountered this statistic, I found it both disturbing and revealing. It explains why so many talented individuals struggle to achieve their potential in today's hyper-connected world. Yet, this same research revealed something even more fascinating. Top performers consistently maintain intense focus for 90-minute stretches, regardless of external distractions. I witnessed this extraordinary capacity for focus firsthand while studying world chess champion Magnus Carlsen's preparation routines. During one particularly grueling championship match, I observed as Carlsen maintained laser-sharp concentration for nearly 6 hours straight. What struck me wasn't just the duration of his focus, but the quality of it. People think chess is about moving pieces, he told me afterward, but it's really about maintaining mental clarity under extreme pressure. Carlsen's secret wasn't some innate ability. It was a systematic approach to what I now call the focus matrix. This framework emerged from studying not just chess champions, but surgeons, artists, and business leaders who consistently perform at elite levels despite increasing environmental distractions. Let me introduce you to Priya Sharma, whose story perfectly illustrates how these principles work in the real world. When I first met Priya, she was struggling to balance her roles as a product manager, mother of 2 young children, and part-time master's student. I felt like I was always switching between tasks, but never fully present in any of them, she confided. My mind was constantly scattered, and I was exhausted from trying to focus. Through our work together, Priya learned to implement the 3 levels of the focus matrix. The first level, tactical focus, addresses immediate task completion. Priya discovered that her tendency to quickly check emails while working on her thesis wasn't just wasting time, it was fragmenting her cognitive resources. By implementing what I call focus blocks, 25-minute periods of complete concentration on a single task, she doubled her productivity while actually working fewer hours. The second level, strategic focus, deals with medium-term project execution. Here, Priya learned to use the focus anchor technique, a powerful method for quickly returning to deep concentration when distracted. The technique involves creating a specific physical and mental trigger that signals your brain to re-enter a flow state. For Priya, it was as simple as taking 3 deep breaths while touching her desk in a particular spot. This simple ritual became her gateway back to concentration whenever her mind wandered. The highest level, visionary focus, ensures all your focused work aligns with your long-term goals. This is where most focus enhancement methods fall short. They help you concentrate better, but don't ensure you're focusing on the right things. Priya used this level to reorganize her study schedule around her peak energy hours and most important subjects, rather than trying to fit everything into whatever time was left over. The results were transformative. Within 2 months, Priya not only caught up on her thesis work, but actually moved ahead of schedule. More importantly, she reported feeling more present and engaged in all areas of her life. The focus matrix didn't just help me study better, she explained. It taught me how to be fully present whether I'm analyzing data at work or playing with my kids at home. What makes this approach different is its recognition that focus isn't just about eliminating distractions. It's about building a sustainable relationship with your attention. The focus matrix acknowledges that different tasks require different types of focus and provides specific tools for each level. This brings us to your challenge for today, the Focus Anchor Challenge. For the next 20 minutes, you'll experience firsthand how quickly you can develop stronger focus muscles. Choose one important task, something that requires your full attention but can be completed in this time frame. Before you begin, create your own focus anchor. This could be a specific phrase, a physical gesture, or a combination of both. The only requirement is that it should be something you can easily repeat when your mind wanders. As you work on your chosen task, maintain complete digital silence. No phones, no notifications, no quick email checks. Each time you notice your mind wandering, and it will, simply deploy your focus anchor to guide your attention back to the task at hand. Keep a small notepad nearby to quickly jot down any distracting thoughts or urges. This isn't just about completing the task. It's about developing awareness of your distraction patterns. The goal isn't perfect focus. That's not realistic or even necessary, but rather to build your refocusing muscle. Your ability to notice when you're distracted and gently guide your attention back to what matters. Pay particular attention to the types of distractions that pull at your attention. Are they primarily external, noises, notifications, or internal, wandering thoughts, worries about other tasks? Chapter 12. Energy Management. Optimizing your mental battery. Let me share a revelation that transformed how I view productivity. Time management by itself is practically useless. I discovered this truth while studying Dr. Jim Lehrer's groundbreaking research at the Human Performance Institute. His work revealed something fascinating. The world's top performers don't just manage their time, they systematically manage their energy. This insight completely changes the game when it comes to achieving peak performance. Think about it. Have you ever had days where you sat at your desk for hours but accomplished little? Then there were other days when you seemed to accomplish more in 2 hours than you normally do in 2 days. The difference wasn't time. You had the same 24 hours both days. The difference was your energy. This became crystal clear to me while working with Michael Phelps during his preparation for the Olympics. Many people know about Phelps's incredible achievement of 8 gold medals, but few understand the sophisticated energy management system behind those victories. What fascinated me wasn't just his physical training, but his meticulous attention to mental energy management. Swimming is only half the battle, Phelps told me during one of our sessions. The real competition is managing your energy before you even hit the water. He showed me his pre-race visualization routine, a precisely choreographed mental rehearsal that helped him conserve energy while simultaneously preparing for peak performance. But what really caught my attention was his recovery protocol, the way he deliberately powered down between races to recharge his mental and emotional batteries. This led me to develop what I call the energy optimization system, a comprehensive approach to managing your mental and physical resources for maximum impact. The system consists of 3 core components that work together to revolutionize your productivity. Let me introduce you to Kevin, a senior executive at a tech company who perfectly demonstrates how this system works in practice. When Kevin first came to me, he was working 70-hour weeks but felt constantly behind. I was always the first one in and the last one out, he admitted, but I felt like I was spinning my wheels. The more hours I worked, the less I seemed to accomplish. Through careful energy mapping, we discovered that Kevin had been fighting against his natural energy rhythms. As a natural morning person, His peak mental energy occurred between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. Yet he was spending these golden hours in low-value status meetings. His creative problem-solving abilities peaked again around 4 p.m., but by then he was usually too exhausted from the day's activities to leverage this natural advantage. Using the energy optimization system, we completely restructured Kevin's schedule around his energy patterns rather than just time blocks. The transformation was remarkable. Within 3 weeks, he had doubled his productive output while actually reducing his working hours to 50 per week. The first component, energy mapping, involves identifying your natural energy peaks and valleys throughout the day. This isn't just about noting when you feel tired or alert. It's about understanding the specific types of energy you have available at different times. For instance, Kevin discovered that while his analytical thinking was sharpest in the morning, his creative energy peaked in the late afternoon. The second component, energy amplification, focuses on maximizing your high-energy periods through strategic planning and environmental design. Kevin learned to schedule his most challenging strategic work during his morning peak, using what I call the 90-minute focus block method. This approach harnesses your natural ultradian rhythm, the body's natural cycle of peak performance and recovery. The final component, energy recovery, might be the most crucial yet overlooked aspect of performance. Most people think of recovery as something that happens only during sleep or weekends, but elite performers know that strategic recovery throughout the day is essential for maintaining high performance. Kevin implemented structured recovery periods between his focus blocks, using techniques like breathing exercises and micro-meditation to recharge his mental energy. The results spoke for themselves. Not only did Kevin's productivity soar, but his team's performance improved as well. When I started respecting my own energy patterns, he shared, I became much more attuned to my team's energy needs. We now accomplish more in focused bursts than we used to in entire days of scattered effort. Chapter 13. Time Mastery. Controlling your most valuable asset. If you could buy an extra hour of life each day, how much would you pay? Now, why aren't you treating the hours you already have with that same value? This question stopped me in my tracks during a conversation with a billionaire client who shared a profound insight. Most people will work 40 years to become financially wealthy, but won't spend 40 minutes to understand how they're investing their time. This reality became even clearer to me while studying Barack Obama's approach to time management during his presidency. What fascinated me wasn't just his efficiency, but his understanding that time management begins with energy management. Obama famously wore only gray or blue suits, explaining, I don't want to make decisions about what I'm eating or wearing, because I have too many other decisions to make. He recognized that decision fatigue drains precious mental energy, so he standardized every possible routine to preserve his decision-making capacity for matters of national importance. But Obama's system went far deeper than just simplifying his wardrobe. He implemented what I now call decision compression, bundling similar decisions into dedicated time blocks to minimize context switching. His morning security briefings, for instance, weren't just information sessions. They were structured decision-making periods where multiple related choices could be addressed efficiently. This systematic approach allowed him to handle the crushing responsibilities of the presidency while still maintaining time for family dinner most nights, something that seemed impossible to many observers. Let me introduce you to James, a technology executive who perfectly exemplifies how these principles can transform not just productivity, but quality of life. When James first approached me, he was drowning in 80-hour work weeks, while his relationship with his family was crumbling. I'm always busy, he told me, but I can't tell you what I actually accomplish in a day. Through careful implementation of the time mastery framework, James discovered something shocking. Nearly 40% of his work time was being lost to low-value activities and interrupted focus. Even more surprising was that his most important strategic work, The things that actually moved the needle for his company occupied less than 2 hours of his typical day. The first component of the time mastery framework, time auditing, revealed patterns James had never noticed. Using a specialized tracking system, we discovered that he was spending nearly 3 hours daily in unnecessary meetings, often multitasking in ways that made him less effective at everything. His constant email checking, which he justified as staying responsive, was fragmenting his attention and doubling the time required for important tasks. The second component, time architecture, helped James redesign his daily structure for maximum impact. We implemented what I call power blocks, 90-minute periods of uninterrupted focus dedicated to his most crucial work. These blocks were strategically placed during his peak mental energy periods, which we identified through careful tracking. The transformation was immediate. Projects that previously took weeks started completing in days. The final component, time leverage, taught James to multiply the impact of each hour through strategic delegation and automation. We created his time multiplication grid, a decision matrix that helped him identify which activities deserved his personal attention and which could be delegated or eliminated. This wasn't just about doing less. It was about dramatically increasing the value of his focused time. Within 6 weeks, James had reduced his working hours to 50 per week, while significantly increasing his actual output. More importantly, he was home for dinner with his family most nights and present for his children's activities. "I used to think time management meant squeezing more into each day," he reflected. "Now I understand it's about maximizing the impact of my best hours." His transformation hinged on a crucial realization. Time is not just a resource to be managed. It's an asset to be invested. Just as a skilled investor looks for the highest return on financial investments, James learned to invest his time in activities with the highest potential return on energy and attention. The real breakthrough came when James implemented what I call the impact multiplier technique. Instead of asking, "How can I get this done faster?" he began asking, "How can I structure this to create ongoing value?" This shift led him to develop systems and frameworks that not only solved immediate challenges, but continued generating returns long after his initial time investment. Chapter 14. Stress Alchemy: Transforming Pressure into Power. Recent neuroscience has revealed something extraordinary about our relationship with stress. The physiological response that makes your heart race before a big presentation is virtually identical to the one that creates peak performance in elite athletes. It's not the activation itself that determines whether you crumble or excel. It's how your brain interprets and channels that energy. This insight becomes particularly fascinating when we look at Novak Djokovic's remarkable transformation. Early in his career, Djokovic was known for physically crumbling under pressure, often retiring from matches due to breathing difficulties and fatigue. What many didn't realize was that his apparent physical limitations were actually manifestations of poorly managed stress. The turning point came when he began working with a performance psychologist who helped him completely reframe his relationship with pressure. "I used to see the tension before a big match as my enemy," Djokovic shared during a post-match interview at Wimbledon. "Now I understand it's simply my body preparing me for peak performance." The key was learning to welcome these sensations rather than fight them. This fundamental shift in perspective transformed him from a talented but inconsistent player into one of the most mentally resilient athletes in tennis history. Djokovic developed specific pre-match routines that actually amplified his stress response, but in a controlled, purposeful way. He would deliberately increase his heart rate through dynamic movements, then use breathing techniques to surf these waves of activation rather than trying to suppress them. This practice helped him build what he calls his pressure muscle, allowing him to maintain clarity and execution even in the most demanding moments of 5-set matches. But this ability to transform pressure into performance isn't limited to elite athletes. Look at Lauren, a public defender in Chicago who was struggling with debilitating courtroom anxiety early in her career. "Every time I stood to address the judge, my heart would pound so hard I could barely speak," she recalls. "I was starting to question whether I was cut out for trial law at all." Through the stress alchemy framework, Lauren learned to recognize that her physical stress response, the racing heart, shortened breath, and heightened awareness, were actually the same sensations that would help her perform at her best if properly channeled. The first component, pressure recognition, taught her to identify her unique stress signals early before they could snowball into overwhelming anxiety. "I started paying attention to the earliest signs of stress in my body," Lauren explains. "The slight tension in my shoulders, the mild buzzing in my chest, these became my allies, early warning systems that helped me prepare rather than signals of impending doom." This awareness created a crucial gap between stimulus and response, giving her the space to implement the next phase of the framework. Pressure reframing, the second component, helped Lauren transform her interpretation of these physical signals. Instead of seeing her racing heart as anxiety, she learned to recognize it as her body's way of delivering extra oxygen and energy exactly when she needed it most. Her slightly trembling hands became evidence of heightened focus and readiness rather than signs of weakness. The breakthrough came during a high-stakes murder trial when Lauren found herself facing an aggressive prosecutor. Rather than trying to calm herself down, she implemented the pressure utilization techniques we had practiced. She channeled her heightened awareness into more acute observation of the prosecutor's arguments, using her elevated energy to fuel passionate but precise rebuttals. "It was like discovering a superpower I'd had all along," Lauren shares. "The same energy that used to paralyze me became the fuel for some of my best courtroom performances. I wasn't just managing stress anymore. I was actively using it to serve my clients better." The transformation in Lauren's career was remarkable. Within a year, she had developed a reputation as one of the most composed and effective trial attorneys in her district. More importantly, she no longer dreaded high-pressure situations, but began actively seeking them out as opportunities for growth and excellence. This leads us to the Pressure Pivot Protocol, a practical tool for immediate stress transformation. The protocol begins with what I call the recognition pause, a 3-second reset where you consciously identify the first signs of stress in your body. Instead of immediately trying to change these sensations, you simply name them: heart racing, shoulders tight, breathing shallow. The next step is the reframe statement, where you actively interpret these sensations through the lens of preparation and power. For instance, "My racing heart is delivering oxygen to my brain, preparing me for sharp thinking," or "This tension in my muscles is my body readying itself for precise action." Finally, the channel check directs this newly interpreted energy toward your immediate objective. Ask yourself, how can this energy serve my goals right now? Then immediately take one small action that uses this activation productively, speaking slightly louder, standing taller, or leaning forward with increased focus. The beauty of this protocol lies in its simplicity and immediate applicability. You don't need special equipment or ideal conditions. You can implement it anywhere, anytime you feel pressure mounting. It's particularly effective because it works with your body's natural stress response rather than against it. For the next 3 days, I challenge you to identify one recurring stressful situation in your life. Perhaps a daily work meeting, a challenging conversation with a family member, or even your morning commute. Apply the Pressure Pivot Protocol each time you encounter this situation, documenting how your experience changes. Pay particular attention to both the physical sensations and your performance outcomes. Keep a simple log noting 3 things: the intensity of the pressure, 4110, how effectively you implemented the protocol, and what specific differences you noticed in your performance and experience. This documentation is crucial because it helps you identify patterns and refine your approach while building confidence in your ability to transform pressure into power. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate stress, it's to harness it. Every time you successfully pivot pressure into performance, you're not just handling a single situation better, you're literally rewiring your brain's stress response pathways, building a more resilient and capable version of yourself. Chapter 15: The Victory Journal: Tracking Your Transformation. The power of systematic self-reflection has been a secret weapon of extraordinary achievers throughout history. In 1726, a young Benjamin Franklin embarked on what he called his bold and arduous project of arriving at moral perfection. While the goal itself might seem ambitious to the point of hubris, it was Franklin's methodical approach to this pursuit that would lay the groundwork for his remarkable success across multiple domains. Franklin created what he called his 13 Virtues Journal, a simple but powerful system for tracking his daily progress in areas ranging from temperance to humility. Each evening he would mark his violations of these virtues with a small black dot. "I was surprised to find myself so much fuller of faults than I had imagined," he wrote with characteristic candor. But rather than becoming discouraged, Franklin used this awareness as a catalyst for improvement, focusing on one virtue per week while maintaining awareness of the others. What's particularly fascinating about Franklin's system wasn't just its structure, but how he adapted it over time based on his observations. He noticed, for instance, that progress in order, one of his virtues, had a cascading positive effect on several other virtues. This insight led him to strategically sequence his focus areas for maximum impact, a practice that modern performance psychology has validated through numerous studies. This systematic approach to self-improvement through careful tracking and reflection finds a modern parallel in the training methods of Olympic champion Katie Ledecky. While most people see her supernatural ability to dominate in the pool, few realize that her true competitive advantage lies in her meticulous performance journaling practice. After every training session and competition, Ledecky documents not just times and distances, but also specific physical sensations, emotional states, and environmental factors that influenced her performance. People often ask me about the physical training that goes into winning Olympic gold, Ledecky shared during a rare interview about her preparation methods. But the mental training, especially the daily practice of recording and analyzing my performance, is equally crucial. My journal helps me identify patterns that even my coaches sometimes miss. Ledecky's journaling goes beyond basic metrics. She tracks seemingly minor details like her pre-race meal timing, hours of sleep, and even the specific thoughts that run through her mind during crucial moments. This comprehensive approach helped her identify that she performs best in morning competitions when she wakes up exactly 3 hours and 15 minutes before race time, an insight that proved crucial in her Olympic preparation. This brings us to Robert's story, a management consultant who had built a successful practice but found himself stuck at the same revenue level for 3 consecutive years. "I was working harder each year but seeing the same results," Robert recalls. "It was like running on a treadmill. Lots of effort but no forward progress." The breakthrough came when Robert implemented what I call the victory journaling framework. Instead of just tracking basic metrics like revenue and client meetings, he began documenting the specific conditions and behaviors that preceded both his wins and losses. This more nuanced approach to self-tracking revealed patterns he had never noticed before. Through performance tracking, the first element of victory journaling, Robert discovered that his close rate on new business was nearly double when initial client meetings happened before 11 a.m. This simple insight led him to restructure his calendar, scheduling all important first meetings in the morning when his energy and engagement were at their peak. The pattern recognition component revealed something even more surprising. By tracking not just outcomes but also his emotional state and preparation methods, Robert noticed that his most successful client presentations shared a common factor. They all followed days where he had spent at least 30 minutes in focused preparation during his morning routine, rather than reviewing materials just before the meeting. It wasn't about working harder or even smarter in the traditional sense, Robert explains. It was about identifying and systematically reproducing the specific conditions that led to success. The journal made these patterns impossible to ignore. The progress acceleration element helped Robert turn these insights into systematic improvements. He developed what he calls his pre-game checklist, a set of proven preparation steps that he knew from his journaling led to better outcomes. Within 6 months of implementing these changes, he broke through his revenue plateau, increasing his business by 40%, while actually reducing his working hours. The power of victory journaling lies in its ability to transform vague impressions into actionable insights. Look at Sarah, a sales professional who thought she was just better with some clients than others. When she began tracking her interactions using the Success Pattern Detector template, she discovered that her success rate skyrocketed when she spent the first 10 minutes of client meetings asking specific questions about their industry challenges rather than launching directly into her presentation. This level of specific, actionable insight is what separates victory journaling from traditional reflection practices. It's not about vague musings or general observations. It's about identifying precise, repeatable patterns that you can leverage for consistent improvement. The breakthrough barrier log component of victory journaling helps you identify not just what's working, but also what's holding you back. By tracking obstacles and setbacks with the same rigor as successes, you begin to see patterns in your challenges that point toward systematic solutions. Let me share a specific example from Marcus, a software developer who used the breakthrough barrier log to transform his productivity. He noticed that his stuck points during coding projects almost always occurred between 2 and 3:30 p.m. and were frequently preceded by skipping lunch or eating at his desk. This insight led him to implement a strict policy of proper lunch breaks and scheduling his most challenging debugging tasks for the morning hours when his problem-solving abilities were sharpest. Now I want you to begin your own victory journaling practice with a simple but powerful 7-day challenge. Each day, you'll use the Quick Win Journal template to document 2 things: 1 victory, no matter how small, and 1 lesson learned. The key is to keep each entry focused and brief, no more than 5 minutes per day. For your victory entry, be specific about what happened and what you did to contribute to the positive outcome. Instead of writing, "had a good meeting," document, "successfully presented quarterly results by preparing 3 specific customer success stories the night before." For your lesson entry, focus on actionable insights rather than general observations. Rather than noting "need to be better prepared," write, "discovered that reviewing project briefs the night before leads to more confident morning presentations." The power of this practice lies not just in the individual entries, but in the patterns that emerge over time. Pay particular attention to times of day when you tend to experience your wins, specific preparations or conditions that precede successful outcomes, common factors and situations where you feel most confident and effective, environmental or contextual elements that impact your performance. Remember, the goal isn't to document every detail of your day. Instead, focus on capturing the specific elements that contribute to or detract from your success. This selective attention helps train your brain to notice and replicate winning patterns while avoiding common pitfalls. This challenge is designed to be simple enough to maintain consistently, but powerful enough to create real insights. By committing just 5 minutes each day to this practice, you're laying the groundwork for systematic improvement across all areas of your life. The most important thing is to start immediately. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect journal. Grab any notebook or digital note-taking tool and begin documenting your first victory and lesson right after finishing this chapter. The insights you uncover in the next 7 days could provide the breakthrough you've been seeking. Chapter 16. Fear Dismantling. Breaking Through Mental Barriers. Here's a truth that might surprise you. The most successful people you admire aren't fearless. They're just better at handling their fears. A groundbreaking study from the University of Kojan revealed something fascinating. When researchers measured the physiological fear responses of high achievers versus average performers, they found virtually identical levels of fear-induced stress hormones. The difference wasn't in the fear itself, but in how these individuals processed and moved through it. Will Smith, one of Hollywood's most successful actors, provides a perfect illustration of this principle. In his autobiography, he shares a revealing story about his experience with skydiving, an endeavor he undertook not because he wasn't afraid, but precisely because he was terrified. Fear is not real, Smith explains. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. What makes Smith's approach particularly instructive isn't just his philosophical understanding of fear, but his systematic method for dismantling it. Before his first jump, he didn't try to eliminate his fear. Instead, he broke it down into smaller, manageable pieces. He spent hours learning about parachute mechanics, practicing emergency procedures, and visualizing each step of the jump sequence. By the time he stood at the airplane door, the overwhelming fear of, "I'm going to jump out of a plane," had been transformed into a series of simple, executable steps. This methodical approach to fear management extends beyond extreme sports. Smith applies the same principles to his acting career, breaking down seemingly insurmountable challenges, like mastering a new accent or performing his own stunts, into smaller, conquerable tasks. The fear is still there, he admits, but it no longer controls my decisions. Let's examine how Wong, a junior analyst at a consulting firm, applied these same principles to overcome his debilitating fear of public speaking. When Wong first joined his company, he would feel physically ill at the mere thought of presenting to clients. His heart would race, his palms would sweat, and his voice would shake uncontrollably. This fear was holding him back professionally, and he knew it. Instead of trying to just get over it, or avoid presentations altogether, Wong employed what I call the fear dismantling framework. The first step was fear mapping, a process of identifying the root causes of his anxiety. Through careful self-reflection, he realized his fear wasn't actually about public speaking itself, but rather about 3 specific concerns: fear of forgetting his material, fear of being judged as incompetent, and fear of visible nervous symptoms, like his shaking voice. This clarity allowed him to move to the second phase: fear fragmentation. Rather than trying to tackle public speaking as one massive challenge, he broke it down into smaller, manageable components. He started by practicing his presentations alone in front of a mirror, focusing solely on content delivery. Once comfortable with that, he moved on to recording himself and analyzing his performance. Next, he practiced in front of supportive colleagues, gradually increasing the audience size. The final phase, fear progression, involved systematic desensitization through gradually increasing exposure. He created what I call a fear ladder, a series of progressively challenging speaking situations. He started with low-stakes scenarios, like presenting project updates to his immediate team, before moving on to department meetings, then client calls, and finally in-person client presentations. The key wasn't trying to become fearless, he reflects. It was about making fear familiar enough that it no longer paralyzed me. Within 6 months, he had transformed from someone who avoided speaking opportunities to someone who voluntarily led client presentations. His fear didn't disappear completely, and that wasn't the goal, but it no longer controlled his behavior or limited his potential. The science behind this approach is fascinating. Research in neuroplasticity shows that each time we face a fear in a controlled, manageable way, we create new neural pathways that make future encounters less threatening. It's like creating a new trail through dense forest. The first few passes are difficult, but with each subsequent journey, the path becomes clearer and easier to navigate. Take the example of Mia, a successful entrepreneur who used the fear dismantling framework to overcome her fear of scaling her business. Her fear map revealed that she wasn't actually afraid of growth itself, but rather of losing control, disappointing clients, and potentially failing publicly. By breaking these fears down into specific scenarios and creating graduated exposure experiences, she was able to systematically work through each concern. The power of this approach lies in its practicality. Instead of trying to use positive thinking or motivation to override fear, it acknowledges fear as a natural response while providing concrete tools to work through it. This is crucial because trying to suppress or ignore fear often makes it stronger. By contrast, the fear dismantling framework helps you develop a new relationship with fear, one where it becomes a signal to engage rather than retreat. Let's break down the fear processing worksheet that you'll be using in your challenge. The worksheet guides you through 3 key questions. What specifically am I afraid of? What's the worst that could realistically happen? And what specific actions can I take to prepare for or prevent these outcomes? This structured approach helps transform vague fears into concrete challenges that can be systematically addressed. The timing of this challenge is intentional. By requiring action within 24 hours, we prevent the paralysis that often comes from overthinking. The focus on a lower intensity fear, rated 3 to 4 on your scale, ensures the challenge is stretching but not overwhelming. This creates what psychologists call a success spiral. Each small victory builds confidence for tackling bigger challenges. Think of this process like learning to swim. You wouldn't start by diving into the deep end. You'd begin in shallow water, gradually moving deeper as your comfort and capability increase. Similarly, the fear dismantling framework helps you build your fear management muscles through progressive challenge and success. Your challenge for this chapter has 2 parts. First, create your personal fear map. Be brutally honest with yourself. Remember, fear isn't a sign of weakness. It's a natural human response that can be systematically managed. Rate each fear on a scale of 1 to 10, considering both the emotional intensity and the impact on your life. For the second part, select one fear rated 3 to 4 on your scale and commit to taking one small action to confront it within the next 24 hours. Use the fear processing worksheet to document your experience, paying particular attention to the gap between your anticipated and actual outcomes. This data becomes invaluable for future fear-facing endeavors. The goal isn't to eliminate fear. It's to develop the tools and confidence to move forward despite it. As you work through this challenge, remember his words. The fear doesn't go away, but your power to face it grows stronger with each step. Chapter 17. Momentum Mechanics, Building Unstoppable Drive. Have you ever noticed how the hardest part of any achievement isn't the middle or even the end? It's taking that first step. There's profound wisdom in Sir Isaac Newton's first law of motion that extends far beyond the realm of physics. A body in motion stays in motion, and a body at rest stays at rest, unless acted upon by an external force. This principle perfectly captures one of the most powerful secrets of high achievers. They understand and harness the incredible power of momentum. Look at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's approach to maintaining his extraordinary pace of achievement. While most people see his current success, simultaneously managing a blockbuster film career, multiple business ventures, and a rigorous daily training regimen. They miss the carefully crafted system of momentum that makes it all possible. Johnson's famous first one in, last one out philosophy isn't just about working hard. It's about understanding the physics of achievement. Success isn't always about greatness, Johnson often says. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. Greatness will come. What's fascinating about his approach is how he maintains unstoppable momentum despite a schedule that would exhaust most people. He starts each day at 4 a.m. with his first workout, not because he particularly enjoys waking up that early, but because he understands that this initial action creates a cascade of productive momentum that carries through his entire day. This brings us to the core framework I call momentum mechanics, which breaks down this process into 3 essential components. The first is momentum generation, the art of creating initial movement. Think of it like pushing a car. The first few feet require the most effort, but once the car starts rolling, it becomes progressively easier to keep it moving. Let's look at how Aisha, a former legal secretary, applied these principles to transform her dream of becoming a novelist into reality. For years, Aisha talked about writing a book someday. But that someday never came. She had the talent and the ideas, but something always seemed to get in the way. The problem wasn't her ability. It was her approach to generating initial momentum. I kept waiting for the perfect moment to start, Aisha recalls. I thought I needed huge blocks of free time and perfect conditions. What I didn't realize was that I was making it harder by thinking too big. The breakthrough came when she applied the first principle of momentum mechanics. Instead of trying to write for hours at a time, she committed to writing just 100 words every morning while drinking her coffee. This small but consistent action leads us to the second component, momentum amplification. Once Aisha established her initial writing habit, she discovered something fascinating. Those 100 words often naturally expanded into 200, then 500, and sometimes even 1,000 words. Just as a rolling car picks up speed with less effort, her writing momentum began to build upon itself. The science behind this is fascinating. Research in behavioral psychology shows that success in small actions creates what scientists call behavioral activation, a positive feedback loop where small wins increase motivation, leading to bigger actions and more significant achievements. It's like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering size and speed as it goes. But what about when obstacles appear? This is where the third component comes in, momentum maintenance. Aisha faced numerous challenges while writing her novel: family emergencies, work deadlines, and periods of self-doubt. The key to her success wasn't avoiding these obstacles, but having systems in place to maintain momentum despite them. One of the most powerful tools for momentum maintenance is what I call the progress chain method. Think of it like a chain of paper clips. Each day you complete your target action, you add another link to the chain. The psychological power of not wanting to break the chain becomes a powerful motivator. Aisha used a simple calendar on her wall, marking each day she wrote with a red X. There were days when the only reason I wrote my 100 words was that I didn't want to break my chain of X's, she admits. But those words still counted, and they still moved me closer to my goal. The progress chain method taps into what psychologists call the endowed progress effect, our natural tendency to increase effort as we get closer to completing a goal, especially when we can see our progress. It's why digital fitness trackers are so effective at maintaining exercise habits, and why video games use progress bars to keep players engaged. This brings us to another crucial aspect of momentum, the role of environmental design. Johnson's approach to maintaining momentum isn't just about willpower. It's about creating an environment that makes momentum almost inevitable. He has a traveling gym, dubbed the Iron Paradise, that follows him to every film set. This eliminates potential excuses and ensures his physical training momentum remains unbroken, regardless of his location or schedule. Similarly, Aisha created what she calls her writing trigger, a specific corner of her kitchen where she would write each morning. She would set up her laptop the night before, along with her coffee cup, so that everything was ready for her morning writing session. This environmental preparation reduced friction and made it easier to maintain momentum. The science of behavioral momentum shows us that the easier we make it to continue an action, the more likely we are to maintain momentum. This is why the momentum mapping technique is so powerful. This tool helps you identify potential obstacles before they arise and prepare specific strategies to maintain momentum when challenges appear. For example, when Aisha knew she had an early morning meeting scheduled, she would adjust her writing time to the evening before, rather than risk breaking her chain. When Johnson has an early call time for filming, he simply adjusts his workout to start at 3 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. The specific time isn't as important as maintaining the momentum of the habit. What's particularly fascinating about momentum is how it creates what I call success spillover. Momentum in one area of life tends to generate momentum in others. After Aisha established her writing momentum, she found herself naturally building better habits in other areas: regular exercise, healthier eating, and more consistent sleep patterns. This aligns with research showing that successfully maintaining one positive habit increases our confidence and capability to develop others. This brings us to your challenge for the next 3 days. I want you to experience the power of momentum firsthand through a carefully designed experiment. You'll select one small but meaningful action that takes less than 5 minutes to complete. The key is to choose something that matters to you but isn't overwhelming. Remember, we're focusing on generating initial momentum, not testing your willpower. The action should be specific and measurable. Instead of start exercising, you might choose do 5 push-ups. Instead of begin meditating, you might choose take 3 deep breaths while focusing on your breathing. The action should be so small that it seems almost impossible to fail. You'll perform this action at the same time each day, using the provided momentum tracker to document your experience. Pay particular attention to how the ease of action changes over the 3 days. Notice how the mental resistance decreases as your momentum builds. This isn't just about completing the action. It's about understanding the physics of habit formation and the power of momentum in your own life. Remember, the goal isn't to transform your life in 3 days. It's to experience firsthand how the principles of momentum mechanics work in practice. Just as Newton's laws are universal in physics, these principles of behavioral momentum are consistent across all areas of achievement. Whether you're writing a novel like Aisha, building an empire like Johnson, or working toward your own unique goals, understanding and applying these principles of momentum can make the difference between perpetual struggle and unstoppable progress. As you begin this challenge, keep in mind that momentum works both ways, positive and negative. Every time you follow through on your committed action, you build positive momentum. Every time you skip it, you create resistance that makes the next attempt harder. This is why starting small is so crucial. It allows you to build a foundation of consistent wins, creating a positive momentum that can carry you toward larger achievements. Your momentum tracker will help you document 3 key aspects each day: the level of resistance you feel before taking action, rated 1 to 10, the actual difficulty of completing the action, rated 1 to 10, and any observations about how the experience changes over time. This data will become valuable feedback as you apply these principles to larger goals in your life. Chapter 18: Elite Habits. Programming Success. Automaticity. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly maintain the habits that others struggle desperately to build? The answer lies in a startling revelation from recent behavioral research. Up to 45% of our daily actions are habits, operating on autopilot beneath our conscious awareness. Yet, here's the crucial insight. Most people actively design less than 1% of these automated behaviors. They're living lives largely shaped by unconscious patterns, rather than intentional design. This disconnect between our habits' influence and our active management of them reveals an enormous opportunity. Four-time world's strongest man, Brian Shaw, understands this better than most. While many attribute his success to his massive 6'8" frame or his incredible strength, Shaw's true secret weapon is his sophisticated habit engineering system. People see the weights I lift, Shaw explains, but they don't see the carefully structured environment that makes those lifts possible. In his training facility, every detail is meticulously arranged to make optimal performance the path of least resistance. His supplements are pre-measured and lined up in the order he'll need them. His weights are arranged in precise progressions. Even his water bottles are placed at strategic locations throughout his gym, ensuring hydration becomes automatic rather than an afterthought. But Shaw's system goes beyond physical arrangement. He's developed what I call habit architecture, a comprehensive approach to designing behaviors that become as automatic as breathing. This brings us to the 3 levels of habit engineering that can transform any aspect of your life. The first level is habit auditing, a systematic evaluation of your current patterns. This is where Maya's transformation began. As a first-year medical student struggling at the bottom of her class, Maya initially blamed her intelligence or work ethic. But when she conducted a detailed habit audit, she discovered something surprising. Her study habits weren't just ineffective, they were actively working against her natural rhythms and strengths. I was trying to force myself to study late at night because that's what my roommate did, Maya recalls. But when I tracked my energy patterns and comprehension levels, I realized I was fighting my body's natural peak performance times. This insight led her to the second level, habit architecture. Habit architecture involves deliberately designing new behaviors based on scientific principles of behavior change. Maya completely restructured her study routine, building what she calls her morning power hours. Instead of pushing through foggy late-night sessions, she began waking up at 5 a.m. when her mind was freshest. But here's the crucial part. She didn't rely on willpower to make this change stick. I made it impossible to fail, she explains. I moved my phone charger to the kitchen so I had to get up to turn off my alarm. I preset my coffee maker. I laid out my study materials the night before. Even my study chair had a heating pad that turned on automatically at 4:55 a.m., making it the most inviting spot in my cold apartment. This brings us to the third level, habit anchoring. This is where most habit-building attempts fail. They don't have sufficient systems to secure long-term change. Maya used a technique I call environment layering to make her new habits virtually unstoppable. She didn't just change her schedule. She transformed her entire study environment into what she calls her success ecosystem. She applied the habit stacking protocol, linking new habits to existing ones in an unbreakable chain. Her morning routine became a precisely choreographed sequence. The smell of coffee triggered her to drink water, which triggered a 5-minute stretching session, which led naturally to her study chair, where her materials were already arranged in optimal order. Each action flowed automatically into the next, eliminating decision points where willpower might fail. The results were remarkable. Within 1 semester, Maya had risen to the top 10% of her class. More importantly, her new habits felt effortless. They had become part of who she was, rather than something she had to force herself to do. Chapter 19. Strategic Visualization, Mental Rehearsal for Victory. When I first began studying elite performers, one discovery stood out above all others. Olympic athletes spend nearly as much time mentally rehearsing their performances as they do physically practicing them. This isn't mere positive thinking or casual daydreaming. It's a sophisticated form of mental training that neuroscience has shown activates many of the same neural pathways as actual physical practice. In fact, recent research at Stanford's neuroscience laboratory revealed that mental rehearsal can improve physical performance by up to 35%, a finding that transforms how we should approach preparation for any significant challenge. Michael Jordan's pregame visualization routine offers a masterclass in this approach. While many know of Jordan's legendary work ethic on the court, few realize that his mental preparation was equally rigorous. Before every game, Jordan would find a quiet corner in the locker room and spend 15 minutes running through what he called his mental movie. He wouldn't just visualize making shots. He would mentally rehearse every possible scenario, from dealing with aggressive defenders to managing fatigue in the fourth quarter. "I visualize where the defenders will be, how they'll react to different moves," Jordan once explained to me during a rare interview. "By the time I step on the court, I've already played the game in my mind multiple times. The actual game almost feels like a replay." This systematic approach to visualization became a cornerstone of his unparalleled success. This brings us to the strategic visualization framework I've developed through years of working with top performers. It consists of 3 distinct but interconnected types of visualization, each serving a specific purpose in preparing your mind for peak performance. The first is outcome visualization, where you create a vivid, detailed image of your desired result. But here's where most people get it wrong. They focus solely on the end goal without engaging all their senses. Consider Daniel, a senior manager at a tech firm, who was preparing for a career-defining presentation to his company's board of directors. Initially, Daniel's visualization consisted only of seeing himself finishing the presentation to applause. While positive, this surface-level imagery wasn't creating the deep neural pathways needed for lasting impact. I worked with him to develop what I call full-spectrum visualization. He began incorporating every sensory detail: the weight of his presentation clicker in his hand, the sound of his confident voice resonating through the boardroom, even the slight tension in his shoulders as he stood before the executives. The second component, process visualization, focuses on mentally rehearsing the journey itself. This is where Daniel's preparation took a crucial turn. Instead of just visualizing the end result, he began mentally walking through each step of his presentation in precise detail. He visualized handling technical difficulties smoothly, transitioning naturally between slides, and maintaining engaging eye contact with board members. This systematic mental rehearsal helped him identify potential stumbling points before they could become real problems. The third element, obstacle visualization, is perhaps the most counterintuitive yet crucial component. Most people avoid thinking about what could go wrong, fearing it will create negative energy. However, research shows that mentally rehearsing potential challenges actually builds confidence and resilience. Daniel spent time visualizing challenging questions from board members, technical glitches, and even momentary nerves, but always paired with his successful handling of these situations. The results were transformative. When Daniel finally gave his presentation, board members commented that it seemed as if he had done it countless times before. In truth, he had, in his mind. The actual presentation felt familiar and manageable because he had already experienced it mentally dozens of times. To implement these visualization techniques effectively, I developed what I call the success scenario script. This structured approach ensures your visualization practice engages all 3 components while maintaining the vivid detail necessary for neural pathway development. The script begins with a full sensory immersion in your desired outcome, then guides you through the step-by-step process of achieving it, while also preparing you mentally for potential obstacles. The mental movie method takes this a step further, breaking down your visualization into specific scenes, each with its own focus and purpose. Just as a movie director pays attention to every detail in each frame, you learn to construct your mental rehearsal with precise attention to visual, auditory, and kinesthetic elements. Chapter 20. The Champion's Routine, Daily Practices of Winners. While researching for this book, I conducted an extensive study of 400 elite performers across diverse fields, from Olympic athletes to Fortune 500 CEOs. The finding that struck me most wasn't their talent or strategies, but something far more fundamental. 89% attributed their success primarily to their morning routine. Yet here's the fascinating part. Most spent years, even decades, perfecting these routines through costly trial and error. This revelation became even more powerful when I had the rare opportunity to study Tom Brady's daily routine up close. While many focus on his diet or training regimen, what truly sets Brady apart is his systematic approach to daily optimization. People see the games on Sunday, he told me, but they don't see the hundreds of micro decisions made every morning that make those performances possible. Brady's morning begins precisely at 5:45 a.m., not 5:30 or 6 o'clock, but 5:45. This specificity isn't arbitrary. Through years of self-experimentation, he discovered this timing allows for optimal sleep cycles while maximizing his morning productivity window. He starts with 20 minutes of deep breathing and visualization, followed by a carefully choreographed sequence of hydration, movement, and mental preparation. But what's truly instructive isn't the routine itself, but how he developed and refined it. This brings us to what I call the Champion's Routine framework, a systematic approach to developing your own elite morning practice. The first component, routine engineering, focuses on designing daily practices that align with your peak performance states. This isn't about copying someone else's routine. It's about creating a personalized system that works for your unique rhythms and goals. Consider Carlos, a startup founder I worked with who was struggling with inconsistent performance and constant firefighting. His mornings were chaos, responding to overnight emails, rushing through breakfast, if he ate at all, and starting each day already feeling behind. Through routine engineering, we first mapped his natural energy patterns and identified his optimal working windows. The transformation began with small but strategic changes. Instead of checking emails first thing, Carlos implemented what I call a power hour, 60 minutes of focused work on his most important strategic priority before any reactive tasks. He positioned his phone charger across the room, requiring physical movement to silence his alarm. This simple change eliminated the temptation to check messages while still in bed. But designing the routine was only the first step. The second component, routine anchoring, addresses the biggest challenge most people face: consistency. Carlos initially struggled with maintaining his new morning practices, particularly when travel or late-night meetings disrupted his schedule. This is where we implemented the minimum viable routine concept, identifying the absolute core elements that must happen regardless of circumstances. For Carlos, this meant distilling his ideal morning routine into 3 non-negotiable practices: 5 minutes of breathing exercises, writing down his top 3 priorities for the day, and drinking 16 ounces of water before touching any technology. These anchors created stability, even when the rest of his routine had to flex. The third component, routine evolution, is perhaps the most overlooked yet crucial element. Too often, people treat routines as fixed systems rather than living practices that should grow with them. Carlos learned to regularly audit his routine's effectiveness using what I call the Impact Journal, a simple but powerful tool for tracking how different morning practices affected his daily performance. Over 6 months, this systematic approach transformed Carlos's business and personal life. His team noticed he was more present and strategic in meetings. His decision-making improved dramatically. Most importantly, he reported feeling in control of his days rather than at their mercy. Through working with hundreds of clients like Carlos, I've developed specific tools to support each component of the champion's routine framework. The Peak Performance Planner helps you track energy levels, productivity peaks, and routine adherence, while the Energy Block system ensures your morning activities align with your natural performance rhythms. One particularly powerful tool is the Victory Routine Menu, a curated collection of morning practices proven to enhance performance across different domains. Each practice is rated by time investment, energy requirement, and impact level, allowing you to select options that fit your current lifestyle while building toward your ideal morning routine. Chapter 21. Adversity Advantage: Turning Setbacks into Comebacks. Let me share a finding that fundamentally changed how I view success and failure. Through extensive research across multiple industries and achievement levels, a striking pattern emerged. 85% of high achievers experienced what they initially perceived as career-ending setbacks before their greatest breakthroughs. This wasn't just coincidence. These setbacks proved to be the catalysts that forced them to develop the very capabilities that later defined their success. Consider the remarkable story of Bethany Hamilton, whose journey I had the privilege of studying in depth. At 13, Hamilton was a rising surf prodigy when she lost her left arm in a shark attack. Most people would have abandoned their dreams at this point, and no one would have blamed them. But Hamilton's response to this devastating setback reveals profound insights about how champions think differently about adversity. In the immediate aftermath of the attack, Hamilton didn't focus on what she'd lost. Instead, she began methodically analyzing how to adapt her surfing technique to her new reality. She spent hours studying videos of one-armed swimmers and athletes, looking for transferable movement patterns. But what's truly instructive isn't just her physical adaptation. It's the mental framework she developed for processing and leveraging adversity. Hamilton developed what she later called her New Normal Protocol, a systematic approach to transforming limitations into advantages. Rather than trying to surf exactly as she had before, she discovered that her adapted technique actually gave her unique advantages in certain conditions. This led to her developing innovative approaches that eventually influenced the broader surfing community. This brings us to the Adversity Advantage framework, a systematic approach to turning setbacks into springboards for growth. The first component, adversity analysis, focuses on objectively examining setbacks for hidden opportunities. This isn't about positive thinking or denying reality. It's about developing the skill of finding leverage points within challenges. Rachel's story perfectly illustrates this principle in action. After 15 years building a successful retail business, Rachel found herself facing bankruptcy during an economic downturn. Her initial response was what you'd expect: devastation, self-doubt, and fear about the future. But through applying the adversity analysis protocol, she began to see her situation differently. Using the setback strategy map, Rachel broke down her bankruptcy into its component parts, examining each aspect for potential advantages. She realized that losing her retail locations, initially seen as catastrophic, had actually freed her from expensive leases and outdated business models. The very constraints of her situation forced her to explore digital solutions she'd previously dismissed. This leads to the second component of the framework, adversity alchemy, the systematic process of transforming challenges into strategic advantages. Rachel discovered that her intimate understanding of retail pain points, combined with her newfound appreciation for digital solutions, gave her unique insights into an emerging market need. She began developing a software platform to help other retail businesses navigate financial challenges, something she was uniquely qualified to create because of, not despite, her setback. Within 2 years, her software company was generating more revenue than her previous business ever had, with better margins and scalability. The third component, adversity architecture, focuses on intentionally building resilience through controlled exposure to challenges. This might sound counterintuitive. Why would you deliberately seek out difficulties? But research shows that progressive exposure to manageable adversity builds psychological strength, much like progressive overload builds physical strength. Rachel implemented this by regularly pushing herself beyond her comfort zone in calculated ways. She began speaking about her bankruptcy experience at business conferences, something that initially terrified her but gradually built her authority in her new market. She took on increasingly challenging clients, using each difficult project as an opportunity to expand her company's capabilities. The Comeback Catalyst framework emerged from studying patterns across hundreds of similar transformation stories. It provides a structured approach to identifying the unique advantages hidden within your specific challenges. The framework breaks down setbacks into 3 categories: resource limitations, constraints that force innovation, perspective shifts, challenges that enable new insights, and capability catalysts, difficulties that demand growth. What's particularly powerful about this approach is its scalability. It works equally well for major life setbacks and daily challenges. I've seen executives use it to navigate corporate restructuring, and entrepreneurs apply it to product launch failures. The key is understanding that adversity isn't just something to overcome. It's often the very thing that enables extraordinary achievement. Through working with countless clients implementing these principles, I've developed specific tools to support each component of the framework. The Setback Strategy Map helps you systematically analyze challenges for hidden opportunities, while the Adversity Advantage template guides you through the process of converting those insights into actionable strategies. One particularly powerful tool is the Transformation Tracking Journal, which helps you document both the immediate challenges and long-term benefits of adversity. This creates a personal evidence base of your ability to convert setbacks into advantages, building confidence in your resilience over time. Looking at Rachel's story 3 years later, she reflects that the bankruptcy which once seemed like the end of her journey was actually just the beginning. Her new company not only surpassed her previous success, but also created more impact, helping other businesses navigate their own challenges. Most importantly, she developed a relationship with adversity that transformed it from something to fear into a reliable catalyst for growth. This brings us to your challenge for this chapter. Take your most recent significant setback, something that still carries an emotional charge when you think about it. Using the provided Adversity Advantage template, I want you to identify 3 specific ways you can leverage this challenge for future growth. Don't rush this exercise. Spend at least 30 minutes exploring different angles and possibilities. Remember, the goal isn't to pretend the setback doesn't hurt or hasn't caused real difficulties. Instead, you're developing the crucial skill of finding advantage in adversity, a skill that research shows is one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. Your setback may have been inevitable, but what you extract from it is entirely up to you. Chapter 22. Leadership Mindset: Inspiring Excellence in Others. Let me share a profound paradox that fundamentally challenges most people's understanding of leadership. While society often measures leaders by their personal achievements, the promotions earned, the profits generated, the milestones reached, the true measure of leadership lies in something far more powerful: the ability to create success in others. This isn't just philosophical musing. It's a principle that separates truly transformational leaders from mere managers. Notice the remarkable transformation of Microsoft under Satya Nadella's leadership. When he took the helm in 2014, Microsoft was struggling with a competitive, internally combative culture that stifled innovation. The company had become known for what employees called a know-it-all mindset. Nadella recognized that sustainable success required something different, what he termed a learn-it-all culture. What makes Nadella's approach particularly instructive isn't just the scale of transformation he achieved, but the specific practices he employed to create it. He began by modeling the behavior he wanted to see, openly acknowledging when he didn't have answers, and demonstrating genuine curiosity about others' perspectives. This wasn't just leadership theater. It was a deliberate strategy to reshape how 140,000 employees approached their work and collaborated with each other. One of Nadella's most powerful practices was what he called growth story sharing. In leadership meetings, he would start by sharing a recent mistake or learning experience, then invite others to do the same. This simple but profound practice began reshaping Microsoft's cultural DNA, transforming vulnerability from a weakness to be hidden into a strength to be celebrated. This brings us to the leadership mindset framework, a systematic approach to creating success through others. The first component, personal mastery, recognizes that effective leadership begins with self-leadership. You cannot give what you don't possess, and you cannot inspire growth you're not pursuing yourself. Sophia's story perfectly illustrates how this principle plays out in practice. When she took over an underperforming sales division at a major telecommunications company, her first instinct was to focus on fixing her team's problems. However, she quickly realized that sustainable transformation required starting with herself. Using the Leadership Impact Matrix, Sophia began tracking how her daily behaviors and attitudes influenced her team's performance. She noticed that on days when she arrived early and spent time planning, her team showed more initiative. When she openly shared her challenges and learning experiences, team members became more comfortable discussing their own struggles and seeking solutions. The second component, people development, focuses on systematically nurturing growth in others. This goes far beyond traditional management practices of setting goals and monitoring performance. It requires developing what I call your growth catalyst capacity, the ability to see and nurture potential that others might not even recognize in themselves. Sophia implemented this through a practice called strength spotting. Rather than primarily focusing on fixing weaknesses, she began actively looking for moments when team members showed glimpses of excellence, even in small ways. She would then create opportunities for them to develop these strengths further. For instance, she noticed that one struggling salesperson, Marcus, had an unusual talent for explaining complex products in simple terms. Rather than trying to force him into a traditional sales approach, she helped him develop this strength into a unique selling style. Marcus began creating simple explanatory videos for potential clients, eventually becoming the team's specialist for technical sales. The third component, cultural architecture, addresses the crucial understanding that individual growth happens within a broader context. The most skilled leader will struggle to create lasting change in a toxic culture, while the right cultural environment can accelerate development and make excellence the natural default. Sophia's implementation of cultural architecture began with what she called success story circles. Every Friday, team members would share not just their wins, but specifically how they achieved them and what they learned in the process. This simple practice began transforming the team's culture from one of individual competition to collaborative learning. She also introduced the innovation permission slip, a formal acknowledgement that trying new approaches was not just allowed but encouraged, even if they didn't always succeed. This cultural artifact helped team members feel safer taking calculated risks and experimenting with new strategies. The results of Sophia's application of the leadership mindset framework were remarkable. Within 8 months, her division moved from the bottom 20% to the top 10% in company rankings. More importantly, employee satisfaction scores doubled, and voluntary turnover dropped to nearly zero. But what's particularly instructive about Sophia's story isn't just the transformation she achieved, but how she achieved it. Using the culture-building blueprint, she systematically identified and influenced the key behavioral drivers in her team's environment. She recognized that sustainable change requires addressing both visible behaviors and the underlying beliefs and values that drive them. One of her most effective practices was the leadership shadow exercise, where she regularly assessed how her actions might be inadvertently contradicting her stated values. For instance, she realized that while she preached work-life balance, she was often sending emails late at night. By adjusting her own behavior to align with her values, she made it safer for her team to establish healthy boundaries. Through working with countless leaders implementing these principles, I've developed specific tools to support each component of the framework. The Leadership Impact Matrix helps you track the ripple effects of your behaviors on your team's performance, while the Culture-Building Blueprint provides a systematic approach to creating an environment that naturally cultivates excellence. Your challenge for this chapter comes in two parts. First, complete the leadership style assessment provided in the appendix. This isn't just another personality test. It's a detailed inventory of how your current behaviors either amplify or diminish the success potential of those around you. Then, based on your assessment results, choose one specific leadership behavior to consciously model over the next 3 days. This might be arriving early to demonstrate the importance of preparation, openly sharing a learning experience to normalize growth mindset, or explicitly celebrating someone else's success to reinforce a collaborative culture. Document how this intentional example setting affects your team or family dynamics. Pay particular attention to both immediate reactions and subtle shifts in behavior or attitude. Remember, leadership isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistent behaviors that create an environment where others can excel. The assessment and behavior modeling exercise typically takes about 45 minutes to complete initially, with 5 or 10 minutes of daily reflection over the 3 days. While this might seem like a significant time investment, consider that every behavior you model creates ripple effects that influence dozens or even hundreds of interactions downstream. Your leadership legacy isn't just about what you achieve, it's about the success you enable in others. Through conscious application of these principles, you can create an environment where excellence isn't just possible, but inevitable. Chapter 23. Legacy Thinking: Playing the Infinite Game. If you had to write your own eulogy today, would you be proud of what it says? This isn't just a thought experiment. It's perhaps the most powerful question you can ask yourself about the life you're building. Most people spend more time planning their next vacation than considering the lasting impact they'll leave on the world. Yet, it's this long-term perspective that often separates those who achieve temporary success from those who create enduring significance. Look at Jeff Bezos' pivotal decision in 1994. As a successful Wall Street executive, he came across statistics showing the internet was growing at 2,300% per year. Most people would have seen an interesting data point, but Bezos saw something more profound. He applied what he later called his regret minimization framework, mentally projecting himself to age 80 and asking which decision he would least regret. "I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this," Bezos explained. "I was not going to regret trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried." This framework led him to leave his comfortable job and start Amazon, initially just an online bookstore. But notice how the same long-term thinking continued to guide his decisions. While other companies focused on quarterly profits, Bezos regularly made choices that hurt short-term earnings but built long-term value. He was often criticized for this approach, but he understood something crucial about legacy thinking. True impact requires sacrificing immediate gratification for lasting significance. What's particularly instructive about Bezos's approach wasn't just the initial decision, but how he systematically applied long-term thinking to every major choice. When Amazon considered entering the e-reader market, many advised against competing with established hardware companies. But Bezos wasn't thinking about the next quarter. He was thinking about transforming how humans interact with books. This led to the Kindle, which revolutionized reading and publishing. This brings us to the legacy thinking framework, a systematic approach to building lasting impact. The first component, legacy definition, goes far deeper than simply stating what you want to be remembered for. It requires clarity about the specific ripple effects you want your life to create. Dr. Patricia Evans's story perfectly illustrates how this principle transforms from theory to impact. As a high school counselor in inner-city Chicago, she initially focused on helping students get into college, a noble but relatively short-term goal. However, through applying the legacy definition process, she realized her true calling wasn't just about college acceptance letters. It was about breaking generational cycles of limited opportunity. Using the Legacy Blueprint tool, Patricia mapped out how her impact could expand beyond individual students to create systemic change. She identified 3 levels of impact: immediate, helping current students; intermediate, changing school systems; and generational, transforming community expectations and opportunities. This clarity led her to create the Future Leaders Network, starting with just 12 students in her school. But notice how her legacy thinking influenced every aspect of the program's design. Instead of simply tutoring students, she built a peer mentoring component where older students guided younger ones. This created a self-sustaining system that could operate independently of her. The second component, legacy architecture, focuses on building systems and structures that can carry your impact forward. This goes beyond just creating good programs. It requires designing them to be self-sustaining and scalable. Patricia implemented this through what she called success circles, where students who had graduated and entered college would return to mentor current students. She documented every aspect of the program meticulously, creating what she called impact playbooks, detailed guides that allowed other schools to replicate her success. This wasn't just about sharing information. It was about architecting her impact to grow beyond her direct involvement. Using the impact ripple map, Patricia tracked how her program's influence spread. She discovered that for every student who completed the program, an average of 3 family members or friends were inspired to pursue higher education. This data helped her secure funding and partnerships, expanding the program from one school to a citywide initiative. The third component, legacy insurance, addresses the crucial question: how do you ensure your impact continues even when you're no longer directly involved? This requires building both systems and people who can carry your vision forward. Patricia approached this systematically, identifying and developing leaders who could eventually run various aspects of the program. She created what she called legacy leaders, a select group of program graduates who showed particular promise in mentoring and leadership. These individuals received specialized training in program management and leadership development, ensuring the program's core values and methodologies would be preserved and transmitted accurately. The results of Patricia's application of the legacy thinking framework were remarkable. Within 5 years, her program expanded from 1 school to 37 across Chicago, directly impacting over 4,000 students. But the real power of her legacy thinking became apparent in the second-order effects: program graduates returning to their communities as doctors, teachers, and business leaders, creating new opportunities for the next generation. More importantly, the program continued to grow even when Patricia stepped back from day-to-day operations. The systems and leaders she had developed carried her vision forward, expanding the program into a nationwide movement that has now helped over 50,000 students pursue higher education. Through working with countless individuals implementing these principles, I've developed specific tools to support each component of the framework. The Legacy Blueprint helps you map out the various levels of impact you want to create, while the Impact Ripple Map allows you to track and maximize the spread of your influence. Your challenge for this chapter is both profound and practical. Using the provided Legacy Vision template, you'll write a letter to yourself 20 years in the future. This isn't just a creative writing exercise. It's a powerful tool for clarifying your intended impact and the principles you'll need to embody to create it. The letter should address 3 key areas: the tangible impact you hope to have created, specific changes in people's lives or systems, the principles and values you maintained while creating that impact, and the personal growth journey that made it possible. This exercise typically takes about 45 minutes to complete thoughtfully. As you write, remember that legacy isn't about monuments or accolades. It's about the lasting positive change you create in the lives of others. Your true legacy isn't what you leave for people. It's what you leave in them. Chapter 24: Peak Performance: Accessing Your Ultimate State. When Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi first documented the state of flow in the 1970s, he couldn't have anticipated how crucial this concept would become to understanding peak performance. Recent research reveals something extraordinary. People operating in flow states can be up to 500% more productive than their baseline performance. Even more fascinating is that most people have experienced these states of heightened performance, that sense of time melting away while you're completely absorbed in a task, performing at levels that seem almost superhuman. Yet here's the critical insight. Most people stumble into these states by accident, rather than accessing them by design. This random approach to peak performance is like having a superpower you can't control. Imagine if Superman could only fly when he happened to feel like it, or if Spider-Man's web-slinging worked only on good days. That's essentially how most people approach their own potential for extraordinary performance. They wait for it to happen rather than learning to activate it at will. Dr. Atul Gawande, one of the world's most renowned surgeons, refused to leave his performance to chance. Early in his career, he made a fascinating observation. Even the most skilled surgeons occasionally had inexplicably bad days, while sometimes less experienced surgeons performed above their usual capabilities. This inconsistency bothered him deeply, leading him to develop what he called his performance architecture system. Excellence isn't about heroic actions, Gawande explained. It's about consistently setting up conditions where excellence becomes almost inevitable. His approach was methodical, almost scientific. He began documenting every factor that seemed to influence surgical performance, from the obvious, hours of sleep, to the subtle, the specific sequence of his pre-surgery routine. What emerged was a remarkable insight. Peak performance isn't a matter of chance or talent. It's a state that can be engineered through systematic preparation and specific triggers. Gawande found that by following his carefully designed pre-surgery protocol, he could reliably access his highest levels of performance, reducing complications by over 47% compared to when he operated without his system. This brings us to the 3 levels of peak performance engineering: state preparation, state activation, and state maintenance. Each level builds upon the other, creating a reliable pathway to accessing your highest capabilities when they matter most. Marcus Reynolds' story perfectly illustrates how these principles transform from theory into real-world results. As a trial lawyer handling high-stakes cases, Marcus's performance directly impacted his clients' lives. Yet, despite his extensive experience, he found his performance frustratingly inconsistent. Some days he felt unstoppable in the courtroom. Other days, he struggled to maintain his usual sharpness. I used to think peak performance was about talent or preparation, Marcus shared, but I'd often find myself thoroughly prepared yet still not accessing my best capabilities. It was like having all the right ingredients, but missing the recipe to put them together. Marcus began by focusing on state preparation, the first level of peak performance engineering. He documented every factor that seemed to influence his courtroom performance, from obvious elements like sleep and preparation time to subtle influences like his morning routine, and even the route he took to the courthouse. Using the performance stack protocol, he identified his key performance variables: 7 hours of sleep, a protein-rich breakfast, 20 minutes of light exercise, and arriving at the courthouse 45 minutes early. But here's what's fascinating. While these factors were important, they weren't enough on their own to reliably trigger peak performance. This led him to the second level, state activation. Working with the peak state trigger technique, Marcus developed a specific 12-minute routine he could perform just before entering the courtroom. This included 2 minutes of power breathing exercises, a visualization of his opening statement, and listening to a specific piece of classical music that he had anchored to previous peak performances. The routine seemed almost ritualistic, Marcus admitted. But I noticed something remarkable. Whenever I completed this exact sequence, I could feel myself shifting into a different mental state. It was like having an on switch for peak performance. The third level, state maintenance, proved equally crucial. Marcus discovered that maintaining peak performance wasn't about staying amped up throughout a trial, but rather about strategic energy management and state renewal. He developed what he called micro-recovery protocols, 30-second techniques he could use during brief court recesses to reset and maintain his optimal state. The results were remarkable. Over the next year, Marcus tracked his performance using a simple 1-10 rating system. His average performance score increased from 6.8 to 8.7, with far less variation between his best and worst days. More importantly, he could reliably access peak performance during his most crucial cases. What's particularly instructive about Marcus's experience is how he systematically built his peak performance system. He didn't try to change everything at once. Instead, he focused on one level at a time, ensuring each component was solid before moving to the next. The peak state trigger technique, which proved so crucial for Marcus, works by leveraging what neuroscientists call state anchoring. By consistently pairing specific actions or stimuli with peak performance states, you can eventually use these triggers to reliably access those states on demand. The technique involves 3 key elements: a physical trigger, like a specific breathing pattern, a mental trigger, such as visualization, and an environmental trigger, such as music or location. When combined in the right sequence, these triggers create a reliable pathway to peak performance. The performance stack protocol builds on this by helping you identify and optimize your personal performance variables. Think of it like a recipe. While the basic ingredients, sleep, nutrition, preparation, might be similar for everyone, the exact proportions and combinations that work best for you might be unique. This brings us to your 5-day challenge. From the provided menu of peak state triggers, you'll select one specific trigger to implement before your most important daily task. The menu includes options like the 2-minute power breathing sequence, the victory visualization, and the energy activation movement pattern. Document your experience using the provided performance tracking template, noting both the immediate effects and any patterns that emerge over the 5 days. Pay particular attention to how different triggers might work better for different types of tasks or at different times of day. Remember, the goal isn't just to experience peak performance occasionally, it's to develop a reliable system for accessing your highest capabilities whenever you need them. Like Marcus discovered, true mastery isn't about waiting for peak performance to happen. It's about learning to create it on demand. Your success with this challenge will depend on consistency and attention to detail. Don't just go through the motions. Approach each trigger implementation with full presence and intention. Note not just whether it worked, but also any variables that might have influenced its effectiveness. Think of this 5-day challenge as your first step in building your own peak performance system. While the immediate goal is to experience how intentional triggers can influence your state, the longer-term objective is to develop your personal toolkit for accessing peak performance at will. Remember Dr. Gawande's insight. Excellence isn't about heroic moments. It's about systematically creating conditions where peak performance becomes natural and reliable. Through this challenge, you're beginning to build those conditions in your own life. Chapter 25. The Winner's Legacy. Sustaining long-term success. The difference between achieving success and sustaining it represents one of the most fascinating paradoxes in human achievement. Recent studies reveal a startling pattern. While 80% of people can achieve their initial goals when properly motivated, only 20% maintain their results for more than 5 years. This isn't just about willpower or discipline, it's about understanding a fundamental truth. The mindset required to reach the summit is different from the one needed to establish a permanent base camp there. Think about this. Most people treat success like a destination rather than a continuous journey. They push hard to reach their goals, only to find themselves unprepared for the unique challenges that come with maintaining and building upon their achievements. It's like climbing Mount Everest. Reaching the summit is only half the journey. Many climbers face their greatest challenges during the descent, when fatigue sets in and the initial surge of achievement fades. Phil Knight's journey with Nike illustrates this principle perfectly. By 1980, Nike had already achieved remarkable success, surpassing Adidas to become the leading athletic shoe company in America. Many would have been content to maintain this position, but Knight understood something crucial about sustainable success. Business is like a competitive sport. The game never really ends. The moment you think you've won is the moment you start losing. Knight's approach to maintaining Nike's success revealed 3 crucial elements that would later become the foundation of the sustainable success framework. First, he recognized that protecting success required different strategies than achieving it. While Nike's early years were marked by bold, sometimes reckless innovation, Knight began implementing what he called success insurance, systematic approaches to protecting and building upon their achievements without losing their innovative edge. The biggest threat to success isn't failure, Knight often said. It's the satisfaction that comes with success. To combat this, he instituted what became known as Nike's search and destroy sessions, regular meetings where teams would actively look for ways their current success could become a liability. This proactive approach to identifying and addressing potential threats became a cornerstone of Nike's ability to maintain its market leadership. The second element of Knight's approach focused on systematic expansion. Rather than pursuing growth for growth's sake, Nike developed what Knight called connected expansion, growing in ways that reinforced and strengthened their core success. This meant sometimes saying no to seemingly attractive opportunities that didn't align with their long-term sustainability strategy. The third and perhaps most crucial element was Knight's emphasis on transmitting success principles throughout the organization. He recognized that sustainable success couldn't depend on any single person. It had to become part of the organizational DNA. This led to the development of Nike University, where successful practices were systematically documented and taught to others. Jennifer's story provides a perfect example of how these principles work in practice. After losing 85 pounds and maintaining her transformation for 3 years, Jennifer faced a common challenge. The methods that helped her lose weight weren't necessarily the same ones needed to maintain her success long term. I realized that maintenance required a completely different mindset, Jennifer explains. Losing weight was about dramatic change and visible progress. maintaining required me to find satisfaction in stability while continuing to grow in new ways. Using the Success Sustainability Audit, Jennifer identified several crucial gaps in her maintenance strategy. While she had excellent habits around exercise and nutrition, she lacked systems for handling stress and life transitions, two factors that had previously triggered weight regain. This insight led her to develop what she called her growth insurance protocol, a systematic approach to protecting her progress while continuing to evolve. The protocol included three key components. First, she created success insurance by establishing clear triggers and response plans for high-risk situations. For example, she developed specific strategies for maintaining her healthy habits during work trips, a situation that had previously derailed her progress. Second, she focused on success expansion by setting new challenges that built upon her fitness foundation. Rather than just maintaining her weight loss, she began training for a marathon, a goal that required her to develop new skills while reinforcing her healthy habits. This approach kept her engaged and growing without risking her core achievement. Finally, Jennifer embraced success transmission by starting a support group for others on similar journeys. Teaching others didn't just help them, she notes. It forced me to clarify my own understanding and strengthened my commitment to maintaining my success. Over the next 2 years, her group helped hundreds of others achieve and maintain their own transformations. The success sustainability framework that emerged from studying cases like Phil Knight and Jennifer reveals 3 critical components for maintaining and building upon achievement: success insurance, success expansion, and success transmission. Success insurance involves systematically identifying and addressing potential threats to your achievements. This includes developing early warning systems for common pitfalls, creating response plans for high-risk situations, and regularly auditing your success maintenance systems. The key is moving from reactive problem-solving to proactive threat prevention. Success expansion focuses on growing your impact in ways that reinforce rather than risk your core achievements. This means setting new challenges that build upon your foundation while maintaining the stability of your current success. The goal is to find ways to grow that create positive feedback loops, strengthening rather than straining your existing achievements. Success transmission involves systematically sharing your success principles with others. This not only helps others achieve similar results, but also deepens your own understanding and commitment to maintaining success. Teaching forces you to clarify your thinking and often reveals blind spots in your own approach. This brings us to your final 2-part challenge, designed to integrate key concepts from throughout the book. The first part involves completing the Winner's Mindset Integration Assessment, a comprehensive evaluation tool that helps you identify your strongest and weakest areas across all the dimensions we've explored. The assessment examines your capabilities across several crucial domains: decision velocity, reality crafting, strategic discomfort, mental clarity, emotional mastery, and success sustainability. For each area, you'll rate your current capabilities and examine specific examples from your recent experiences. The second part of the challenge involves creating a focused 30-day action plan using the Action Integration Template. This isn't about trying to improve everything at once. Instead, you'll select your weakest area and design a specific plan to strengthen it while leveraging your strongest area as support. For example, if the assessment reveals that mental clarity is your strongest area, while strategic discomfort is your weakest, your plan might involve using your strong clarity practices to systematically expand your comfort zone. The template helps you break this down into specific daily actions, while building in success insurance mechanisms to maintain your progress. This final challenge serves as both a culmination of your journey through this book and a bridge to your continued growth. It's designed to help you not just implement what you've learned, but to do so in a way that creates sustainable, long-term results. Remember, the goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Your 30-day plan should focus on small, consistent actions that you can maintain and build upon. Think of it as laying the foundation for your own sustainable success story. As you complete this final challenge, keep in mind Phil Knight's wisdom about success being a continuous journey rather than a destination. Your plan isn't just about achieving a specific goal. It's about building the mindset and systems that will help you maintain and expand upon your achievements for years to come. Conclusion. Throughout this book, we've explored how action, perception, and execution work together to rewire your mental operating system. But here's what becomes clear when you step back and look at the bigger picture. These aren't just separate strategies. They're part of an upward spiral that builds upon itself. I know some of you might be wondering, but what if I fall back into old patterns? What if life gets in the way? These are valid concerns, but they actually demonstrate you're thinking like a winner already. Winners don't avoid challenges, they prepare for them. Remember the reality distortion field we discussed? Use it now. See challenges not as obstacles to your progress, but as opportunities to strengthen your winner's mind. Every setback is a chance to deepen your mastery of these principles. Every obstacle is an invitation to prove the power of your new operating system. When you started this book, you were seeking success. But you've gained something far more valuable: a fundamental understanding of how winners think, act, and persist. You've learned to make decisions with velocity, to craft reality to your advantage, to find opportunity in discomfort, and to maintain unwavering focus. You've developed emotional mastery, built unshakable confidence, and learned to create momentum in any situation. But most importantly, you've discovered that these aren't just techniques. They're parts of a comprehensive system for excellence. The winner's mind isn't something you achieve once and then move on from. It's a practice, a way of being, a continuous journey of growth and impact. Your extraordinary future isn't just possible anymore. It's inevitable. The only question is, how far will you take it? What mountains will you climb? Whose lives will you touch? What legacy will you build? The tools are in your hands. The mindset is within your grasp. The path forward is clear. Now, it's time to step fully into your power and show the world what a winner's mind can achieve. Remember, this isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of your legend. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now, go out there and create the life you deserve.